Chapter 231. This was a refining method of the demonic path, one that believed that quantitative change would eventually lead to qualitative change. This was a treasure refined from over 600 swamp alligator teeth. Its might truly surpassed one's imagination. For several miles, all of the seawater exploded, turning into endless white powder. Of course, this was only a description from the surface, but it was enough to shake one's soul. The boiling seawater displayed an incomparably terrifying destructive power. Anything that fell into it, even an entire mountain, would be torn to pieces. This was already proven by the collapsing rift at the bottom of the sea. With a loud rumbling sound, everything collapsed, turning the deep valley into flat land. After a long time, the white powder that the seawater had turned into finally began to recede, revealing the distressed figure of the whale sovereign. His face was pale, and his black armor hung in tatters on his body. Countless wounds crisscrossed his body, and blood dripped down from the broken armor before being swept away by the seawater. There was a gash on his face, starting from the tip of his left eyebrow and slanting down to the corner of his mouth, all the way to his lower jaw. His flesh and blood were overturned, and white bone could be faintly seen. He no longer had the arrogant and disdainful aura he had before. Qin Yu's eyes were ice-cold, without the least bit of warmth. The sea map above his head slowly unfurled. Countless islands were scattered all over, all of them shining like precious treasures. He lifted a hand and pointed a finger into the sea map. Where his finger fell, there was a black dot. In the next moment, a dazzling beam of light fell from the skies, tearing apart the endless seawater and submerging the whale sovereign. It was so fast that when Qin Yu's finger fell, the beam of light arrived in the space of a single breath of time. His finger fell and the light came, but as fast as it came, it also left. As the islands on the sea map dimmed, the beam of light disappeared and the beam of light vanished with it. In the deep sea, a straight channel appeared, stretching from the seabed to the surface. It paused for a moment before seawater surged up, submerging this channel. Cough, cough, cough. The whale sovereign violently coughed. Yes, he hadn't died, but his appearance was extremely miserable. Most of his scalp had been torn off and his chest had been torn open. One could even see his struggling heart. He looked up at Qin Yu. He lifted a trembling hand and a light cracking sound came from his palm. Qin Yu stiffened. The whale sovereign chuckled. I never imagined that I would be forced into such a distressed situation by you. I was even nearly killed by you. But in the end, the one who is laughable is still me. He opened his hand, revealing a broken bead in his palm. The figure within had also broken apart along with the bead, but one could still see that it was Qin Yu's appearance. His broken face was twisted in pain. I could have explained to you what this bead is, but you're too strange. I don't want you to turn the tables on me at the last moment, so I won't say much. Then let's end this. The whale sovereign walked over. His head had turned into the head of a fierce whale. It seemed rather strange on a human's body. He opened his mouth to reveal a mouthful of sharp teeth. Puff! The whale sovereign stiffened. He blinked his eyes, confusion filling his face. The pure white sword in Qin Yu's hand pierced through the jaws that were covered with fangs. The tip of the sword pierced through the top of the head, revealing a small section. Blood flowed down the snow-white blade, dyeing his palm red. I don't know what this bead is, but it's clear that it's useless against me. Qin Yu's eyes flashed with a cold light. Whale sovereign, let us never meet again. He exerted strength in his palm, and the sword spun. Blood wildly gushed out like a waterfall, drenching Qin Yu's hair, dyeing his face red and soaking his black robes. Roar! With an angry roar, the phantom of a giant whale appeared. It looked at Qin Yu with incomparable hatred in its eyes. Then, in the next moment, it blew itself up without hesitation. The whale's sovereign had already touched upon the divine soul realm. Even if he hadn't made a breakthrough, his soul had already begun to transform. Thus, after his mortal body died, his soul could launch a final attack. Within his soul space, Qin Yu's soul suddenly opened its eyes. In the next moment, countless tiny cracks appeared on its surface, tightly weaving together. Spirity stuffily coughed. The point between her eyebrows split open, and a dark red mark appeared, glistening with moisture. On the surface, it seemed that her injuries were much lighter than Qin Yu's soul. But the truth was that Spirity stuffily coughed and fainted. The partner's soul took its host as its master. When it resisted external attacks, the vast majority of the damage would be borne by it. Otherwise, if the whale sovereign's soul blew up, it would be enough to drag Qin Yu down with it. In the outside world, Qin Yu's complexion paled and his eyes darkened. Traces of blood began to flow out from his head, and his body began to totter. At this time, a sudden change occurred. The blood that stained Qin Yu's sword hand suddenly faded, as if it were being absorbed. Following that, all the blood from the whale sovereign's corpse wildly gushed out, flowing down the sword blade and vanishing into his palm. A warm current rapidly spread through his body. This feeling of his mortal body cheering in comfort and his soul groaning in pain mixed together was truly indescribable. Qin Yu stood where he was, not willing to move at all. Time slowly passed. As the terrifying shock waves dissipated, although the seawater at the seabed was still tumbling, it had lost its all-destroying strength. All of the sea folk watching this battle widened their eyes. Was it over? Who was the final victor? Originally, this wasn't something too difficult to imagine. Just how powerful was the whale sovereign? It was only natural for him to win. But with that terrifying momentum just now and the absolute strength that Qin Yu had revealed, no one dared to lightly judge him. In particular, those sea folk masters that had received a warning from Sea God Palace to hold back. At this time, as they rejoiced, they felt even more gratitude towards the Lord Priest. Luckily, they hadn't done anything. Otherwise, they feared they would have died dozens of times over. Who could have imagined that Qin Yu, who originally only had a golden core cultivation, would become so freakishly strong in just a few years? But even though they were shocked, after a brief moment of hesitation, some people began to approach the area where the battle had erupted. Of course, they were careful as they prepared to flee at any moment. But every sea folk that approached held a bit of hope in their hearts. Perhaps the battle between the whale sovereign and Qin Yu would result in both sides suffering? Didn't that mean that they would have a chance to profit from the fight? Soon, the first sea folk to pass through the heavy waves and arrive at the center of the battle appeared. This was a thin, black-clothed man. His face was covered with a veil, revealing only a pair of slender eyes that shined with a sharp light. He was first shocked by the horrifying scene at the seabed, but soon his eyes fell onto Qin Yu and the whale sovereign. At first glance, the black-clothed man's mind shook. The whale sovereign had died. He had actually been killed. However, Qin Yu's condition didn't seem too great. He stood there stiffly, his aura nearly undetectable. Could it be that he had also died? Wild joy rose in the depths of the black-clothed man's heart. He licked his lips, endless greed erupting in his eyes. After a brief hesitation, the black-clothed man rushed out. Many people were hurrying over. He couldn't delay. Otherwise, this great lucky chance in front of him might fly away. Wealth came from danger. Taking risks wasn't anything at all, much less at this time when Qin Yu seemed to be in a perilous situation. If the heavens wanted him, if he didn't take it, he would suffer. He lifted a hand. Dark light circulated in his palm. The black-clothed man lifted his hand, about to strike Qin Yu's back. Even though it seemed that Qin Yu wasn't a threat at all, it was better to be cautious. If someone could kill the whale sovereign, one didn't need to be an idiot to know that they were a ruthless and ruthless character. Perhaps they still had a single breath of life left. If he wasn't careful, he might fall into a trap. But just as he was about to attack, his body stiffened. Then his chest exploded and a red sword pierced through his back. The sword blade blazed with flames, igniting the black-clothed man's corpse. It began to burn in the deep sea like a raging torch. Deep sea flames. No matter how one looked at this scene, there was a deep strangeness to it. Thus, the second sea folk master's eyes widened and he hesitated. The whale's sovereign was thoroughly dead. His head had been pierced through, and most importantly, there wasn't a single breath coming from him. It was clear he couldn't be deader than dead. The one that was burning was nearly cooked, and he was also thoroughly dead. There was only Chinyu left. Although he didn't seem to be much of a threat, the one that was burning was clearly his handiwork. He was truly fierce. To kill the whale sovereign was already terrifying enough, but he still had the strength to kill others. If one didn't see this with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed it. The sea folk master's eyes turned. He flicked his sleeves, and the temperature of the seawater rapidly dropped. In the blink of an eye, a black ice arrow condensed. Shwa! Without a sound, the black ice arrow tore through the seawater and shot towards the back of Chinyu's head. Everything went smoothly. In just a blink of an eye, he would be able to witness the splendid scene of a head exploding into flowers. The sea folk master's heart suddenly shrank. Pa! The black ice arrow shattered, and a black shadow howled towards him. He wanted to dodge, but his body froze. Puff! Blood gushed out, and a head shot into the skies. Then, the blood that gushed out from the neck froze over. The speed was so fast that it actually caught up to the head that flew out. Then the following scene appeared. The headless corpse wildly spat out blood. After it froze over, it resembled red fireworks. The head hung above, its face filled with panic and fear. The ice spread, covering the entire body. Not too far away from the burning sea folk, another ice sculpture appeared. That's right. Chinyu had indeed been injured. In particular, when the whale sovereign's soul exploded in the end, if it weren't for Spirity blocking the majority of the impact, he would have already died. Even so, with his formidable soul cultivation, when he used Spirit Stab in conjunction with the 5-element swords, his attacks were still inconceivably sharp. This was why he was able to kill 2 people without even moving his body. More members of the sea race finally arrived. Burning corpses, frozen corpses, these 2 completely different strengths caused one's mind to race. In particular, the scene of the whale sovereign's jaw being pierced through caused a cold chill to crawl up from the hearts of all the sea folk. Chinyu had won. He was actually terrifying to the extreme. It was already unimaginable that he could kill the whale sovereign, but even though he was severely wounded, he could still kill 2 more. It was hard to recognize the one who was burning, but it was clear that the one who was frozen was a master of the South Mountain tribe. As everyone was hesitating, Chinyu moved. He slowly drew out his sword. The whale sovereign's corpse seemed as if it had been dried out for countless years. It quietly disintegrated into powder that was swept away by the seawater, vanishing without a trace. Chinyu turned around. His movements were slow and stiff, as if his mind and body weren't in harmony. This scene caused the eyes of many sea folk to brighten. Chapter 232. He's injured. It was unknown who spoke first. Although his voice wasn't loud, it spread through the seawater and entered the ears of all the sea folk. Chinyu sighed, his eyebrows furrowed together, as if he were helpless. Human Chinyu has killed the cornerstone of my sea races, the whale sovereign. We cannot let him leave. That's right, we must keep him here. Otherwise, where will the prestige of my sea races go? Everyone attack together. Let's see if he really has 3 heads and 6 arms. The crowd roared, their emotions roused. Chinyu turned his head and looked at the sea race expert in the crowd. His face was flushed red, and the wound between his eyebrows was swollen with blood. Whoosh! There was the sound of breaking air. In the next moment, blood splashed into the air. The sea race master, who had been making the most noise, fell backwards. His chest and abdomen had been torn apart. A terrifying strength instantly extinguished all life. There was a deathly silence. Chinyu's eyes darkened. He coughed several times. "That's right, I am indeed severely wounded. But, believe me, before I die, I will always have a way to drag some people to the grave with me." He pointed a finger. You. Of course, it could be anyone else. Any one of you could. Will you let me leave peacefully, or will you gamble that you won't die? Make your choice." The sea race masters' complexions were uncertain. They certainly weren't willing to let Qin Yu leave. But if they really wanted him to stay, there was a great difference between seeing someone die with their own eyes and seeing it later. Qin Yu had already proven that he still had the strength to easily kill others. "Hand over the Whale Sovereign's storage magic tool, and I can let you leave." Whoosh! This sea race powerhouse, who clearly had some prestige, had his head separated from his body before he could finish speaking. Blood spurted out with piu-piu sounds. Qin Yu struggled to say, "I'm sorry, but I won't leave anything behind. Does anyone have any objections?" In the current situation, he couldn't show the least bit of weakness. Otherwise, these sea folk would take an inch and take a yard. Finally, they would turn into greedy wolves that would gnaw at him until not even his bones remained. The complexions of the sea race masters changed. There was anger in their eyes, but there was also a bit of dread. If Qin Yu dared to recklessly kill people, it was clear he still had strength to spare. If he truly went all out, many people would die, and they might even be among them. If things continued to develop like this, then perhaps Qin Yu really might be able to shake off all the sea race masters and escape from their encirclement. But there were always accidents. There were also some sea folk that weren't afraid of death. For instance, the whale monster race masters. Although the Lord Patriarch had declared that he had nothing to do with the whale monster race, and even strictly ordered them not to meddle in this matter, the whale monster race couldn't just stand idly by. After an urgent discussion, the whale monster race sent out a formidable team of 5 nascent soul powerhouses. They concealed their tracks and secretly hurried to Moon Praying Shrine. They were well aware that with the Lord Patriarch's temperament, once he was forced to this step, he would absolutely not allow Qin Yu to leave alive. The facts proved that they understood the Whale Sovereign, and their judgment was correct. But the result was completely different from what they had imagined. The Lord Patriarch had died. Not only that, but also how the whale monster races and had was the whale, the greatest, the use S. After confirming this result, all of the whale monster clansmen paled. They were well aware that the decline of their tribe was inevitable, but this decline was also divided into levels. If they could kill Qin Yu here and avenge the Whale Sovereign, then with this momentum, perhaps the whale monster race would have a chance to struggle at death's door and rise again in the future. Otherwise, if they allowed Qin Yu to swagger away, he would lose all of his essence, energy, and soul. Everyone would kick a man when he was down, and the whale monster race would be beyond redemption. Thus, the whale monster clansmen attacked. Their eyes were filled with madness and determination. Even if they all died here, they would drag Qin Yu down with them. Qin Yu! With a hateful roar, the first whale monster master rushed out. He returned to his original form and slapped the seawater, causing massive waves to rise up, his aura billowing outwards. Puff! Its flesh was torn apart and blood gushed out. A deep cut appeared between the whale's eyes. Flesh and bone were separated, and blood flowed out, mixed with a muddy white paste. Kill him! Avenge the Patriarch! But this didn't frighten those behind. More whale monsters rushed out, all of them returning to their original forms. There were at least several dozen of them. The surrounding sea folk masters were overjoyed. Even if Qin Yu still had strength left over, these whale monsters would be more than enough to consume what little strength he had left. At that time, they would naturally have a chance. This was simply too wonderful. They praised the whale monster race, praised their noble spirit of sacrificing themselves for others. Qin Yu bitterly smiled. Right now, he had the strength to kill 4 or 5 more people. If these whale monsters all rushed at him, there really wasn't much he could do. However, Waiting for death wasn't something he could do. Even if he couldn't escape, he still had to go all out and kill a few more people. For instance, his right index finger. In these past years, the little blue lamp had injected countless poisons into it. Qin Yu hadn't been willing to use it, and if he really did die, he would explode it. That would definitely cause many people to bleed from every orifice and die miserable deaths. Stop! With a cold shout, an old turtle appeared. Its thin body stood straight, and its wretched face was filled with dignity and dignity. Turtle Origin flicked his sleeves. Giant waves rose up from the seabed, blocking the whale monsters and forcing them back. Turtle Origin, what are you doing? An old whale spoke in the human language. If you stop us from taking revenge for our patriarch, we won't rest until we die. Today, no one can stop us. Not only was the whale monster race enraged, but the various seafolk powerhouses that were singing praises in their hearts were also thoroughly enraged. What do you mean? What do you mean? We just saw a glimmer of hope, and you want to destroy it? Even if you are Turtle Origin, this is too much. Turtle Origin, it's best if you don't interfere in today's matters. This was someone who maintained his status, his tone dignified. Dao Friend Turtle, as a human, there is no need to provoke so much trouble. This was someone who pretended to be calm and spoke up to advise him. Senior Turtle, you are the cornerstone of the sea region. Are you really going to allow this human to act as he pleases in front of my sea race? This was a sanctimonious and righteous display of pressure. Turtle Origin had no expression. Qin Yu is someone that His Majesty wants. If anyone touches him, that is the same as becoming enemies with the capital city. The old whale flew into a rage. Turtle Origin, even if His Majesty comes here today, he won't be able to save this man. Children, follow me and kill him to avenge the patriarch. Bang! The seawater violently exploded. With loud rumbling sounds, it rushed into the distance. A mountain-sized turtle appeared deep in the seabed. It opened its mouth and ruthlessly swallowed. The old whale screamed miserably as it was wrapped up in seawater and pulled into the turtle's mouth. Creak! Creak! Blood gushed out from between its teeth and lips, dyeing the seawater red. The whale monster clansmen were stunned, and so were the various sea race powerhouses. No one imagined that Turtle Origin's reaction would be so cruel and bloodthirsty. He had directly eaten up the strongest of the whale monster clansmen, the old whale monster. Gulp! The large turtle raised its neck, the sound of swallowing becoming incomparably clear. Its icy cold eyes swept around. Defying His Majesty's will is the same as plotting treason. I have the qualifications to punish you on behalf of His Majesty. I am old and have been a vegetarian for many years, but occasionally eating a few bites of meat to supplement my nutrition might not be bad. This was a naked death threat, and the key point was that this old turtle had the qualifications to threaten them. Even such an amazing existence, like the old whale, had been swallowed up in a single bite. If it were them, they feared they would die even faster. Moreover, looking at Turtle Origin's actions, it seemed he was determined to capture Qin Yu. If he tried to stop him, then if he really angered His Majesty in the capital city and was charged with the crime of deceiving the ruler, there would be no end to future troubles. The old turtle turned its head and coldly said, "Qin Yu, come with me." Qin Yu cupped his hands together. "If so, then I'll have to offend you." He stepped onto the turtle's back. The large turtle turned and swung its limbs. The seawater surged and lifted him away. A moment later, after determining that no one was chasing after him, Qin Yu was sent flying away. The large turtle vanished and turned back into human form. Turtle Origin looked Qin Yu up and down. Fellow Taoist Qin Yu's methods are truly amazing. You even managed to kill off the whale sovereign. I admire you. Qin Yu bitterly smiled. I was just lucky. I don't deserve Senior's praise. Don't call me Senior, it grates on my ears. Compared to the whale sovereign, I am a bit weaker. If you can kill him, then there is no need to mention me." These words were mocking and taunting, but they were also earnest. Strength represented status. Right now, Qin Yu already had the qualifications to stand on equal footing with him. Qin Yu bitterly smiled. "All right, enough nonsense. Let's hurry." Turtle Origin flicked his sleeves and wrapped him up. Then they held forwards. Soon, a large ship appeared in front of them. The members of the capital city's war division were waiting for them. As they saw Turtle Origin arrive, they all bowed. As their eyes fell on Qin Yu, they were filled with shock and awe. Killing the whale sovereign, just this alone was enough to obtain their respect. "Set sail immediately. If someone catches up to us again, things will become troublesome." The old turtle waved his hand. It was clear he wasn't as confident as he seemed. The ship soon set sail, heading straight for the capital city. Before Qin Yu could ask anything, he was sent to a cabin to recuperate. His soul injuries were severe, so he went into seclusion. He swallowed and refined the star pills in his storage ring to repair the damage to his soul. Unfortunately, even the top-grade pills that had been purified by the little blue lamp didn't have much effect on Qin Yu's soul injuries. They could only barely suppress the pain, but the surface of his soul was still covered in cracks. If he were to withstand another impact, he feared his soul would shatter. After the ship sailed for several days, Qin Yu opened his eyes. He let out a deep breath, a helpless look on his face. It seemed that if he wanted to repair his soul, he would need to draw support from a formidable external force. His eyes flashed and his thoughts raced. If the sea sovereign didn't hesitate to offend all sides and order the old turtle to forcefully take him away, then there must be a need. Without a doubt, the greatest possibility was that it was related to him crazily helping the sea folk cross tribulation these past days. Could it be that the sea sovereign was crossing tribulation? If this was true, then Qin Yu might be able to take advantage of this opportunity to put forward some appropriate requests. For instance, repairing his soul injuries. After all, his soul was damaged, so there might be dangers when he crossed tribulation. Of course, taking a step back, even if it wasn't the whale sovereign crossing tribulation, he would still have a chance to put forward his own requests. Now, all he had to do was patiently wait. Chapter 233. There was a small interlude along the way. There was a knock on Qin Yu's cabin door, and the person standing outside was unexpected. "Princess Leshy, it's been a long time." After a brief pause, Qin Yu smiled and spoke, his voice light and gentle. The princess had an indifferent expression. "There is no need to enter. I will only ask you one thing. When father bestowed a marriage upon you, why did you refuse?" Qin Yu cupped his hands together. "My heart already belongs to someone else. I cannot destroy the princess' happiness just to live." Princess Leshy was stunned. She immediately frowned. "Is what you say true?" "I can make a vow." Her eyes softened a little. Princess Leshy turned and left, sighing inwardly. The facts proved that her eyesight was excellent and the person she chose was outstanding. He was countless times more outstanding than anyone else her age. But why did they have to meet so late? Or perhaps it was better if they didn't know each other at all. The princess pursed her lips and vanished around a corner. The ship sailed through the deep sea, the waves tumbling about. The ship docked at the dock. Qin Yu stepped onto the deck and looked at the magnificent and miraculous undersea city in front of him, his expression calm. After disembarking the ship, Turtle Origin left. A group of people from the capital city escorted Qin Yu onto a carriage and into the royal palace through a side door. What happened next surpassed Qin Yu's expectations. He didn't need to look for an opportunity to request for Soup Man to personally deliver many soul-healing treasures. "Qin Yu, rest well. If there is anything you need, feel free to ask." Although he hadn't interacted much with Soup Man, Qin Yu knew a little about his greedy nature. He was surprised. It seemed that His Majesty in the palace had a request for him, and it was quite important. After thinking for a moment, Qin Yu suppressed these thoughts. It was fine as long as he focused on recovering from his injuries. When the time came, he would naturally know what was going on. What Soup Man delivered were indeed extremely precious treasures of the sea region. Qin Yu borrowed the little blue lamp's power to hasten their growth, making them even more potent. Time quietly passed. Although the strength of these treasures was absorbed by his soul, the cracks on its surface didn't disappear. In the hall, Qin Yu opened his eyes. A bit of gloominess flashed in them before he bitterly smiled. Indeed, it was useless. The soul was the most mysterious existence in a cultivator's body. One needed to touch the divine soul realm or, like Qin Yu, possess a heaven-defying good fortune in order to do so. It was incomparably powerful, possessing all types of mysteries. However, once it was damaged, repairing it was unimaginably difficult. Moreover, what worried Qin Yu the most was that Spirity had been in a deep slumber ever since that day. Through their connection, Qin Yu could sense that her aura was constantly weakening. If this continued, Qin Yu was worried that Spirity would never wake up. Just how could he repair his soul and awaken little Ling? As Qin Yu was distressed, His Majesty had finally made appropriate arrangements in the Grand Hall. He had already secretly cleaned up the many uncertain factors. Even if he failed to cross tribulation, the capital city's authority would be able to pass smoothly without widespread chaos. Call Qin Yu to see this solitude. Not long after this man with the greatest influence in the world, whose cultivation and status stood at the peak, spoke. Qin Yu was brought to the grand hall at the center of the royal palace. Raising his head to look at the towering aura, he immediately knew who he was going to meet next. Straightening his black robes, he pushed open the doors and strode in. The first thing he saw was the figure sitting on the dragon throne. He sat there quietly, and there was no powerful aura around him. Yet he seemed to be the center of the world, causing people to feel reverence. Qin Yu greets your majesty. The sea sovereign opened his eyes, his expression calm. He was a dignified man. From the very start, he had never described his appearance. This was because, with his status, there was no need to mention such things. Qin Yu, do you know that this solitude has been sitting on this throne for over 300 years without leaving? Qin Yu's heart shook and his eyes turned dignified. As the ruler of the sea race, I wield the highest authority in the world, and I control the lives and deaths of trillions of lives. It might seem like I have endless glory, but who knows of the hardships within? You've already seen the underground vine. It's my companion vine. If I hadn't transferred my power to it, I wouldn't have been able to live until today. But the feeling of having one's own cultivation base extracted is really not good. I believe that my will is tough, but I don't want to endure it any longer. Therefore, I hope that you can help me obtain freedom. The whale's sovereign had an indifferent expression. He lowered his head and finally revealed the arrogance of a transcendent king. This solitude must cross tribulation, break through the cage of my body, and obtain a new life. Qin Yu, are you willing to help this solitude? Of course, this wasn't really a question. If you don't believe me, why don't you try rejecting me? Qin Yu bowed. I will do everything I can. He paused for a moment and continued to say, but I will need to make some preparations for this. After all, if there is an accident, I cannot afford the consequences. Good. This solitude will give you 3 days. Your Majesty, I still have something to say. He looked up. It isn't that I have petty thoughts, but the truth is that the world is full of dangers. I have no choice but to consider things as soon as possible. I hope that your Majesty can give me a promise and allow me to leave once I smoothly cross tribulation. The sea sovereign nodded. Very well, this solitude agrees. But you must also agree to a condition. After you leave the sea region, you must never take another step into it for the rest of your life. Qin Yu bowed. As your Majesty wishes. By controlling the method to cross tribulation, he could create a massive number of nascent souls. If he were to be used by someone, he would have the qualifications to stir up storms in the sea region at any time. At that time, his rule over the capital city would likely be greatly threatened. After reaching an agreement, Qin Yu respectfully bowed and left the grand hall. On the way to the capital city, he had already guessed that the sea sovereign might be crossing tribulation. He had communicated with the little blue lamp before. Although he didn't obtain a response, Qin Yu knew that the little blue lamp must have received his inquiry. Since it didn't refuse, it was clear that dealing with heavenly tribulation wouldn't be a problem. However, there was still a difficult problem. If he helped the sea sovereign cross tribulation, he couldn't do it like he did at Moon Praying Shrine. He couldn't let them fall into a deep sleep and use the medicinal efficacy to stimulate their cultivation and draw down heavenly tribulation. Then, what could he do so that he wouldn't expose the existence of the little blue lamp? This was the reason why Qin Yu said he needed to make some preparations. After returning to his dwelling, Qin Yu's thoughts stirred. The array formation in the grand hall revolved, isolating this place from the outside world. Light flashed in his hand, and a little blue lamp appeared. He looked at it for several breaths of time and said, "I want to help the sea sovereign cross tribulation. This should be beneficial to you, but your existence cannot be exposed. So, I want to know, what method do you have to resolve this?" The little blue lamp had its own will. This was already proven. The little blue lamp gently trembled. The coral in the hall was still crimson red, indicating that it was daytime, but faint traces of deep blue surged on its surface. Then, like a bubble, it suddenly burst open and vanished from sight. Qin Yu was startled. He closed his eyes, and a thumb-sized lantern appeared in his soul space. A blue light shot out, falling between Qin Yu's eyebrows and turning into a faint mark. It was blurry and constantly changing, making it impossible to see what it was. After a long time, he opened his eyes. His complexion was a bit complex. He sighed and finally revealed a smile. So it was only today that he had obtained the approval of the little blue lamp and become its true master. Perhaps this test had already begun when he inadvertently obtained the little blue lamp at the Eastern Mountain sect. It really wasn't easy at all. In the past, Qin Yu had tried to subdue the little blue lamp with just a few drops of blood. He had been far too naive. But no matter what, this was a wonderful thing, wasn't it? He thought that the next 3 days would pass in peace and quiet. But before long, a guest arrived at Qin Yu's palace. "Greetings, Lord Qin Yu." The one who spoke was a member of the capital city's war division. Qin Yu had seen him before on the great ship that had come to the capital city. Qin Yu frowned. "What do you want?" The war division member respectfully said, "This subordinate has received orders to give the box to you. Time is limited, and I cannot stay for long. There is something in the box that can help you dispel your doubts." The war division member bowed once more and left. The box wasn't large. It was about twice the size of an adult's palm. The surface of the wood was covered in a thick layer of paste. It was clear that it was often played with by people and was an ancient object. Qin Yu sensed it and didn't find anything wrong. Then he flicked his sleeves and opened it. There were no traps, poison gas, or anything like that. It seemed he had been too cautious. Inside the wooden box was a long object wrapped in gray leather. Beside it was a jade slip. From its appearance, it didn't seem to be an object of the sea races. Rather, it had a bit of human style to it. Qin Yu reached out and took the jade slip. A halo of light flashed on its surface before it shattered into motes of light that rapidly condensed into a screen in front of him. A group of figures appeared in front of him. It seemed that somewhere within an ancient and magnificent building, there was a hint of decay in its mottled appearance. But there was even more of a hidden background. "Lord Qin Yu, when you see this, it is clear that you have already received the gift we have passed on to you. This key is related to the secrets of the world. We have always believed that it is the key to helping the sea spirit awaken. You are the sea spirit's world walker. We have given you this key in hopes that you will be able to obtain some harvests. At the end of the screen, everyone lower their heads, respectfully and sincerely bowing. The screen shattered. Qin Yu frowned. He recognized the person who spoke. He was one of the 4 priests that had managed the sea spirit baptism. But today, he and the 3 people beside him seemed a bit older. Looking at their clothes, these sea folk that appeared on the screen should be priests of the capital city. But the key question was, why did they say that he was the sea spirit's world walker? Qin Yu looked at the long gray leather rolled up in the wooden box. He took it out and unraveled it, revealing a square piece of jade. That's right, it was a rectangular square pillar. There were countless dents on its surface, and even traces of flames burning it, as if it had experienced a great calamity. But it wasn't damaged at all. In particular, within this square jade, there was a key sealed inside. It was perfectly intact. Qin Yu had a dignified expression. He picked it up and carefully examined it. There were no signs of refining at all. So how had this key been placed inside? Or could it be that this key itself had grown out from this square jade? But no matter what possibility it was, there was one thing he was sure of, and that was that this square jade wasn't an ordinary object. The key that the priests had given him must have played a great role. Thinking about it, it seemed that it was related to the secrets of the world as well as the sea spirit's awakening. Qin, you didn't know what the world was, but he had already touched upon the strength of the sea spirit. This was absolutely a level that surpassed his boundary and imagination. Qin Yu grasped the key, and his eyes flashed. Perhaps he should find a chance to ask the priests about this. Chapter 234. Following that, everything was calm and tranquil. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. News that the sea sovereign was about to cross tribulation was still in a highly restricted state. But as long as they had the qualifications to touch upon the highest circles of authority, they would be notified. On one hand, they did everything they could to control their subordinates so that they wouldn't be suspected by His Majesty at this critical moment and be purged. On the other hand, they stared at the royal palace with wide eyes. When His Majesty crossed tribulation, whether he succeeded or failed, it would inevitably cause a great storm. If they could grasp this opportunity, it would be an excellent opportunity. Of course, this opportunity could be good or bad. If they walked the right path, they would be filled with riches and glory. But if they walked the wrong path, they would fall into an abyss beyond redemption. At noon, when the coral was at its brightest red, the skies above the royal palace quietly darkened. This color was extremely light, like the coloring of a landscape painting. It carried with it a deep and profound aura. As soon as it appeared, it attracted the attention of countless people. Most of the capital city's sea folk revealed looks of surprise, not knowing what was happening. But at this time, the true great figures began to feel their heartbeats quicken and their complexions turn incomparably dignified. His Majesty, he had begun. Although they already knew this was happening, it was only when His Majesty truly began to cross tribulation that they discovered what was happening. The shock they received in advance was on a completely different level. Soupman paced around anxiously, like an ant on a hot pan. "Old Turtle, do you think His Majesty will be fine?" "Pa, pa, pa. My mouth is really asking for a beating. What sort of character is His Majesty? Since he chose to cross tribulation, he must have confidence in himself." But even though he said this, he still couldn't help but walk around in circles, rambling on and on. Turtle Origin was distraught. He shouted out, "Can you stop? My eyes are going blind." Soupman clenched his teeth. "I also want to stop, but I can't. If I stop, I will panic." "You disgraceful old thing. What are you panicking for? You actually have no confidence in His Majesty. You really deserve to die." Turtle Origin didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he cursed himself. That's enough. Qin Yu was able to kill the whale sovereign. Disregarding how he did it, just this point alone is enough for him to stand at the peak of the world. If he joins forces with His Majesty, that is absolutely the strongest combination in the world. The chances of them successfully crossing tribulation are extremely high. Moreover, do you not know what Chinyu does? He has caused more heavenly tribulations than you and I have ever seen combined. Since he has agreed to help His Majesty, he should know that if he fails, he will not have a good ending. So, don't worry, everything will be fine. Soup Man nodded again and again. He had an excited expression on his face that seemed to say, "You're right, I worship you too much." But in the blink of an eye, his face turned into a sad one. "You old turtle, do you think I don't understand your temperament? You've always been lazy and undisciplined. How could you possibly speak so many words at once? The more you say, the less confident you are. Don't try to lie to me." Turtle Origin was so angry that he felt his teeth ache. At this time, we should just comfort each other. Even if you sense something, why did you have to say it? Now he was starting to panic. The few patches of darkness in the sky above the royal palace suddenly became thicker. Like ink ingots falling into water, they began to quickly melt. As a result, the water turned black and covered the entire pond in the blink of an eye. Moreover, it continued to spread outwards at an astonishing speed. All of this took a long time to describe, but it actually happened shockingly fast. In the blink of an eye, the entire sky above the capital city was covered in darkness. The rolling black clouds were strangely silent, but the terrifying aura that fell down caused everyone's hearts to tremble. Countless sea folk widened their eyes. His eyes widened, and his face was filled with fear and shock. He didn't know what had happened. Crossing tribulation? But the key point was that they had never seen heavenly tribulation on such a large scale, and with such a terrifying momentum. In the Grand Hall, the Sea Sovereign looked up. His eyes seemed to pierce through the roof and fall onto the vast and mighty tribulation clouds. He took a deep breath and slowly stood up. His movements were incomparably slow and stiff. But with this simple movement, a heaven-shaking roar echoed through the air, as if a monstrous tide were crashing into the heavens. This sound was astonishing. In the blink of an eye, it reverberated through the entire capital city. Countless sea folk paled. It was like a mountain was pressing down on their chests, making it difficult for them to even breathe. This was because what accompanied this terrifying sound was an unimaginably boundless aura. This sort of pressure that could crush all left their minds panic-stricken. Deep underground, in a place that no one could see, the terrifying vine crazily tumbled about. Countless vines withered and leaves fell to the ground. The strength that the Sea Sovereign had stored within its body began to rapidly withdraw. This sort of rapid withdrawal was extremely damaging to the vine, but it silently withstood it, not resisting at all. This was because it was well aware that only when the Sea Sovereign took back his strength would it have a chance of surviving. Otherwise, its fate would be destruction. The Sea Sovereign straightened his body. He was like a peerless divine sword that hadn't been unsheathed for hundreds of years. He recklessly revealed his own aura, announcing his existence to the world. Boundless, thick, dignified, and powerful aura rose up like a beacon, towering between the heavens and earth. Starting from the dragon throned beneath him, the ground and even the entire Grand Hall began to crack. Then, like smoke, it shattered into countless pieces that scattered across the earth. To others, this place was the center of the royal palace, the place where the highest authority in the world lay. But to the Sea Sovereign, this was only a cage that had imprisoned him for over 300 years. Since he had chosen to cross tribulation, there was naturally no need for this place to exist any longer. As the Grand Hall broke apart, it was no longer able to block out the might of the heavens and earth. Strong winds howled, stirring up the Sea Sovereign's robes. His black hair fluttered behind him. He narrowed his eyes and looked at the boiling tribulation clouds in the skies above. This feeling of freedom, I haven't felt it in a long time. Chinyu stood outside the Grand Hall and watched as it disintegrated. At this time he lightly said, "Your Majesty, rest assured that after today, The skies are high and the seas are wide. There will no longer be any hindrance to you." The sea sovereign laughed out loud. "The skies are high and the seas are wide. Good. This solitude likes these words. But you should know that if there is an accident in crossing tribulation, you will accompany this solitude to the Yellow Springs. If he failed to cross tribulation, the sea sovereign would naturally die. Even so, with his status, he wasn't just trying to scare someone. Qin Yu was well aware that if the sea sovereign died, he would also die. But his expression remained calm. To be able to travel to the Yellow Springs with your majesty is an honor, but I still have many worries in this world, so I do not wish to die. I can only disappoint your majesty's good intentions." "Ha ha ha ha. Qin Yu, this solitude has only just discovered that you are truly a wonderful person." The sea sovereign looked up. "But for now, this solitude will first see just how powerful this heavenly tribulation is. Do not interfere." Bang! A heaven-shaking explosion seemed to split apart the heavens and earth. Blazing lightning instantly flashed. Countless sea folk were left aghast. They subconsciously closed their eyes, tears flowing down their cheeks. Then there was a terrifying sound, like the collapse of the heavens and the seas. It roared into their ears and rumbled in their minds. There was a great wave in the sea. Everyone impatiently opened their eyes, wanting to know just what was happening. They saw a figure standing proudly beneath the tribulation clouds. A terrifying aura swirled around him like a dragon. He wore bright yellow robes that were slightly damaged. His neatly combed hair was a bit messy, but this didn't destroy his aura. Rather, it made one feel even more dignified and overbearing. Boundless and vast, he looked down on all directions as if he were the center of the world. Because a terrifying aura surrounded him and space twisted around him, it was impossible to see his appearance. But this aura, this cultivation, there was only one person in the entire sea region. His Majesty, he was the supreme existence that controlled the rise and fall of the sea folk. The sea folk were shocked and then suddenly realized. No wonder the heavenly tribulation had such momentum today. It was because the one crossing tribulation was His Majesty. Although this was a secret and no one knew what boundary His Majesty's cultivation had reached, the capital city's sea folk were well informed and knew that His Majesty had touched upon a very, very high threshold. Just one more step and he would surpass the limits of strength in this world. But this threshold wasn't easy to cross. This was something that could be concluded from the fact that His Majesty had never appeared in front of others for several hundred years. Then, could His Majesty successfully cross tribulation today? The sea folk felt their hearts skip a beat and their eyes widened. What is going on? His Majesty is crossing tribulation on his own. Where is Qin Yu? Where is that bastard Qin Yu? Soupman flew into a rage. He swallowed so many of my treasures. If he can't help His Majesty cross tribulation, then I will skin him alive and burn his bones to ashes. Turtle Origin sneered. He even killed the whale sovereign. If you go there, you'll just be seeking your own death. Soupman roared, I don't care. As long as he can't help His Majesty, I will kill him. He turned his head, his eyes ferocious. At this time, you actually have the mood to sneer and remain so calm? Aren't you worried about His Majesty? So what if I am worried? Do you think you and I can rush up and help His Majesty resist heavenly tribulation? Turtle Origin lightly said. Don't blindly worry about it. Right now, His Majesty wants to rely on his own strength to resist heavenly tribulation. On the contrary, this gives me even more confidence. If His Majesty dares to do this, then he must have the confidence to do so. These words seemed to make a lot of sense. Soupman was stunned. As he looked at His Majesty in the skies, he took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. He constantly told himself that it was still early and it wasn't the time to go crazy. Princess Lushy had a nervous expression. Her hands were entwined together. She stood together with her fellow brothers and sisters, watching as her father crossed tribulation. Only a few people knew that Qin Yu had been brought to the capital city. She quietly thought to herself, "Qin Yu, as long as you can help my father cross tribulation, then all grudges between us will be written off. You must not disappoint me." Rumble, rumble. The second bolt of heavenly tribulation descended. The sea sovereign laughed. "Come then." He stepped into the skies. With a flick of his sleeves, monstrous strength surged outwards. His momentum was like a great river that came from the east, directly crushing apart the thunder. "This solitude has avoided you for several hundred years, but now it seems that your strength is only SOSO. The sea sovereign's momentum soared. "Come, come, come. This solitude is right here, waiting for you to kill me." In the black vault of heaven, two blood-red lights suddenly appeared. They were shaped like two eyeballs that locked onto him. Thus, the aura of the tribulation clouds suddenly deepened. The air became thick and viscous, like an invisible swamp that wanted to submerge and swallow everything. Chapter 235. The third thunder descended. A faint trace of red appeared, like a flower blooming in spring. It was light and gentle, but as it fell into one's eyes, it caused one's mind to sink. It was like a collapsing mountain, capable of destroying everything. The sea sovereign wildly laughed as he punched out. His momentum was like a moving mountain and sea. Wild strength tumbled around him like a fierce tiger breaking out of its cage, mercilessly biting down. The tribulation thunder was cut in half. After several breaths of time, it was torn apart into countless pieces that tumbled and dissipated. The pale blood-colored heavenly tribulation clearly contained a terrifying might. But the sea sovereign didn't even give it a chance to display its strength before it was torn apart once more. Qin Yu sighed inwardly. He was truly worthy of being the ruler of the sea region, the person with the highest authority in the world. He truly had the strength to match his status. He was powerful to an inconceivable degree. He had broken through nascent soul and formed an undying divine soul. Just how terrifying was the might of heavenly tribulation. But in front of him, it had been easily rolled over. The sea sovereign's true cultivation was likely several times stronger than the whale sovereign's. Compared to Pill Crucible and the demon monarch, he was also a level weaker. Disregarding the existences that Qin Yu didn't know about, the sea sovereign could be called the #1 powerhouse in the world. But the more this was the case, the more it proved that today's heavenly tribulation wasn't as simple as it seemed. Golden Core Tribulation Thunder, 1. Nascent Soul Tribulation Thunder, 3. Divine Soul Tribulation Thunder, 9. Perhaps these 3 bolts of tribulation thunder were only the appetizer. Otherwise, with the sea sovereign's pride, he would have been forced to avoid heavenly tribulation for over 300 years, trapped in his dragon throne without daring to leave. Little blue lamp, can you really do this? Qin Yu's eyes revealed a trace of worry, but in the next moment he forcefully suppressed it. With things having come to this point, no matter how powerful the heavenly tribulation was, he could only continue forwards. There was no turning back. The 4th tribulation thunder was a deep red. The 5th tribulation thunder was as red as blood. The 6th tribulation thunder was blood red. The sea sovereign's tall and straight figure was forced back for the first time. His bright yellow robes were scorched black and his face paled. The shock waves of the collision with the heavenly tribulation were like a hurricane, instantly sweeping through the entire capital city. Countless tall buildings were shaved off and then turned to powder. The terrifying explosion left the minds of the sea folk buzzing. Their eyes widened in horror. Even though they were very far away, they could still sense how powerful the 6th bolt of tribulation lightning was. If it had been them, they would have been reduced to ashes in the blink of an eye. The people of the royal capital subconsciously revealed astonished expressions. Their cultivations were higher, so they could sense how terrifying the tribulation lightning was. The fact that His Majesty was only slightly injured and took a few steps back after taking the thunderhead on was already far beyond their expectations. However, this was only the 6th thunderbolt. There are still 3 bolts of tribulation lightning, they muttered in their hearts. Soupman was stunned. As he looked at His Majesty being forced back, he was well aware that if it weren't for the fact that he couldn't resist it, then with His Majesty's prideful nature and the anger that he had hidden for over 300 years, it was absolutely impossible for him to retreat. Although it was only a pale complexion, Soupman was sure that His Majesty was injured. He was definitely injured. "Chinyu, hurry up and make your move." The low roar was overflowing with ruthlessness. Nothing must happen to His Majesty. Absolutely not. Turtle Origin's face sank. "His Majesty is fine. I know it's fine, but this is only the 6th thunderbolt. You and I both know that the Divine Soul has 9 tribulation lightning bolts, and every 3 bolts form a step. The might of the 7th thunder far surpasses that of the 6th. His Majesty cannot take it any more." Turtle Origin fell silent. He looked at the Sea Sovereign's back and gently sighed. With His Majesty's intelligence, how could he not have guessed this? But even if he knew, he still wouldn't retreat. His Majesty was still the majesty of the past. 300 years of being imprisoned had only tempered his mind to become more tenacious and formidable. Although heavenly tribulation was terrifying, he still had to fight to the last moment. Qin Yu's body tensed. Within his Dantian Sea, the 5-element golden cores shined with a brilliant light. He was already prepared to attack. But at this time in the skies, the Sea Sovereign slowly said, "This solitude is fine." Qin Yu was startled. A look of admiration appeared in his eyes. In all fairness, if he were in Qin Yu's shoes, he might have been able to last until the 6th thunder. But he would clearly be severely wounded, and there might even be the threat of death at the 7th thunder. He should have chosen to give up. The ruler of the sea races truly had the pride and self-confidence that a ruler should have. The 7th thunder. A faint purple light. Compared to the purple corals in the sea, it was much thinner. But this purple light was like the sharpest sword in the world. Purple energy came from the east, instantly crossing space and piercing into the depths of the soul. Qin Yu's pupils shrank. He could feel the true terror of the 7th thunder. It actually had the strength to affect the soul. But thinking about it, it was normal for divine, soul, heavenly tribulation to involve the soul. But even though it was normal, if there was even the slightest mistake, then he would be struck by the pale purple tribulation thunder. Even a powerful existence, like the Sea Sovereign, wouldn't be able to escape. In the blink of an eye, the purple lightning submerged the Sea Sovereign. Qin Yu's complexion was heavy. The Sea Sovereign's reaction had been too slow. If he couldn't withstand it, then perhaps Qin Yu would have to consider how to escape. A resonant roar rang out. Within the purple lightning, the phantom of a 1,000-foot flood dragon appeared. A massive portion of its scales had shattered and blood wildly gushed out from its wounds. In the next moment, this blood was completely evaporated by the lightning, revealing flesh and blood underneath. Underneath the ravaging lightning, it was soon charred black. The flood dragon roared, its massive body twisting as if it wanted to tear apart the lightning. Princess Lushy's tears fell like rain. She could feel just what sort of intense pain her father was withstanding right now. Qin Yu, you bastard, where are you? Why haven't you done anything yet?" Turtle Origin stubbornly held onto Soup Man. Their auras collided, causing the void to rumble. Calm down, calm down. If you rush out now, there is no use at all. You will only add to His Majesty's troubles." "I won't add to His Majesty's troubles. I will chop up Qin Yu. That bastard. He still hasn't done anything. I will kill him. I will kill him." Soup Man roared out again and again. Turtle Origin bitterly smiled. He could only desperately hold onto Qin Yu. He looked up into the skies. Within the purple lightning, the flood dragon struggles, seemed to weaken a little. This caused his heart to tighten. "Your Majesty, are you going to give up your life for your pride? That would be far too funny. Or was there really a problem with Chinyu? Was he deliberately not saving his Majesty?" Thinking of this possibility, Turtle Origin stiffened. He subconsciously retracted his hand that was holding on to Soup Man. Turtle Origin was shaken away. Soup Man rushed out, straight towards the center of the royal palace, straight towards the ruined Grand Hall. "Chinyu! Chinyu!" A cruel roar echoed through the royal palace. Princess Lushy's heart skipped a beat. It was unknown what she was thinking, but her complexion paled. The surrounding princes and princesses all revealed shocked expressions. They didn't know just what had happened. Soup Man was actually so angry, and he even shouted out Chinyu's name. Even with their status, this name was like a thunderclap that reverberated in their ears. The whale's sovereign had been killed. Such explosive news had already spread throughout the entire sea region as the powerhouses from all sides left. Of course, as for how Chinyu had left, it wasn't said in detail. Most of it was hastily mentioned. What nonsense! Could it be that their group had been beaten so badly by Chinyu that they didn't even dare to move? And then they were forced to lower their heads and admit defeat by Turtle Origin? Of course, they couldn't slap themselves in the face. Thus, news of Chinyu being brought back to the capital city didn't spread out. Could it be that Chinyu had returned? Was His Majesty's sudden decision to cross tribulation related to him? As they were thinking this, they saw Princess Lushy rush out. The princes and princesses were stunned for a moment before they hurriedly followed behind. Outside the shattered Grand Hall, Chinyu frowned. He turned around. Supman's figure raced forwards, a crazed look in his eyes. "Chinyu!" Supman felt his field of vision darken. He was immediately sent flying away by a boundless strength, crashing into a Grand Hall. With a loud rumbling sound, the Grand Hall collapsed. Princess Lushy and the others just happened to arrive. As they saw this, they were shocked. Supman's strength could be considered a peak existence within the royal palace. Although he was still a distance away from His Majesty and Mr. Turtle, to be able to send him flying away in a single exchange. Just what sort of strength did this require? As they looked down, they saw Chinyu's calm face. They couldn't help but feel awe. He was truly worthy of being a powerful existence that had killed the whale sovereign in a frontal confrontation. His strength was truly astonishing. The collapsed Grand Hall was sent flying away. Soup Man drilled out with a distressed expression. He clenched his teeth and said, "Chinyu, even if you have transcendent abilities, if something happens to His Majesty, I will make sure you die without a grave." Chinyu's eyes flashed with a cold light. Turtle Origin hurried over. He hurriedly said, "Chinyu, Soup Man is only worried about His Majesty. Don't take this to heart." Chinyu coldly snorted. "Keep an eye on him. It won't be so simple next time." Princess Lushy suddenly said, "Chinyu, hurry up and help my father. I know you can do it." Chinyu shook his head. "You underestimate His Majesty too much." Before his voice fell, a dragon's roar echoed out once more. In the skies, the flood dragon's body expanded by 30%, tearing apart the purple lightning. The flood dragon howled as it flew forwards. As it neared the ground, it transformed into a human form. The sea sovereign's complexion paled and blood dripped down from the corners of his lips. Divine, soul heavenly tribulation is truly formidable. This solitude blocking the seventh thunder tribulation is already my limit. Chinyu, it's your turn now. Chinyu nodded. Without speaking further, he turned and stepped forwards, directly facing the tribulation clouds and ascending into the skies. Your Majesty, are you all right?" Soup Man anxiously asked from afar. The sea sovereign waved his hand. "I'm fine." Princess Lushy revealed a happy expression, but as her eyes fell on Chinyu, her heart tightened. The seventh tribulation thunder was already so terrifying. The remaining 8th and 9th tribulation thunder were clearly even more terrifying. Could Qin Yu block them? Moreover, because of the interference of external forces, the might of the heavenly tribulation would increase. It would likely be far more terrifying than normal. As she was worrying in the capital city, countless eyes lit up as they stared at Qin Yu's figure. As the most famous existence in the sea region, he was instantly recognized by everyone. No wonder His Majesty suddenly wanted to cross tribulation. With the doubts in their hearts solved, what followed was excitement. Within Moon Praying Shrine, Qin Yu had helped over 200 sea folk, nascent souls. Regardless of how strong or weak the heavenly tribulation was, it had all vanished from sight. How had he done this? This was the greatest question that lingered in the hearts of all the sea folk. Now, there was finally a chance to unravel this mystery. All the sea folk widened their eyes. Even the sea sovereign stared at Qin Yu, waiting for what he would do next. Rumble, rumble, rumble. A dazzling purple light held forth like a waterfall. Its aura shook the heavens and earth, capable of extinguishing all things. Chapter 236. Qin Yu's body tensed. A feeling of being locked onto by a higher existence rose up from the depths of his heart, transforming into an instinctive fear. His soul shivered, his body stiffened like iron, and his heart nearly stopped beating. This was the might of the 8th tribulation thunder. Before it truly erupted, its aura was already hard to contend with. But this process only lasted for a short period of time. Within his soul space, the little blue lamp suddenly cried out. Then, a strange aura fused into Qin Yu's soul. All of his fear retreated like a tide, leaving behind only a calm and indifference. It was like a gaze looking down from above, one that carried a bit of carelessness and confidence that everything was under control. That's right, it was the kind of will that controlled everything. At this moment, everyone discovered a change in Qin Yu's aura. He suddenly became calm, and although he didn't move, this feeling was clearly transmitted. It was as if the tribulation thunder in front of him and even the tribulation clouds in the skies were nothing to him at all. Then, Qin Yu moved. He grasped forwards. Yes, it was a simple action. He straightened his arm and then grasped it. It was natural and casual, as if he were catching a falling leaf from a tree. But the key point was that what he faced now was the terrifying 8th tribulation thunder. What he reached out to grab was also this. To directly touch tribulation thunder with his mortal body. Did Qin Yu want to commit suicide? All of the sea folk that saw this, whether they were strong or weak, couldn't help but widen their eyes in disbelief. Sutman's feet softened and he fell to the ground. He didn't care about Qin Yu's life or death, but it was clear that he was in the same boat as His Majesty. Bastard, bastard. If you want to die, then why did you harm His Majesty? Princess Leshy nearly cried out in alarm. She opened her small mouth, opening it wider and wider until it was large enough to swallow a salted duck egg. But at this time, no one noticed the princess' shameful appearance, because everyone was in the same state. Everyone's eyes widened, making one worry that they would explode in the next second. Qin Yu had grabbed the tribulation thunder. He had grabbed the 8th tribulation thunder, the incomparably terrifying deep purple 8th tribulation thunder. He had said it 3 times. Okay, he had really grabbed it. It was like a rope, a branch, or a leaf floating in the air. No matter how much the purple tribulation thunder struggled, wildly roaring, it couldn't break free. The spreading lightning submerged Qin Yu's entire body. However, it was clear that even though the lightning was leaping about, it did not cause him any harm at all. Everyone was speechless. That's right, they all knew that Qin Yu had a way to deal with heavenly tribulation. But no one knew that his methods were exaggerated to such an extent. Catching heavenly tribulation with one hand. Big brother, was there anything more absurd and ridiculous than this in this world? If I didn't see it with my own eyes, who would dare to say such a thing? I would definitely smash his head. Pooh! Bragging right in front of me. looking for sh*T. But this is real. My God, the sea folk groaned inwardly. They wanted to tremble and sing the song of conquest. Suddenly, the eighth tribulation lightning began to shrink at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just a few breaths of time, only half of its original size remained. He had been devoured, I'm not surprised. I'm already used to it. I can even grab heavenly tribulations with my bare hands. So what's the big deal about swallowing heavenly tribulations? Why was his mouth so wide open? Nonsense, was it supposed to open now? I haven't closed my eyes at all. Fortunately I have foresight. Otherwise, it would be very difficult to open it again after closing it. It shrank by half, and then another half. Soon, the tribulation lightning had turned into a rope. One end was in Chinyu's hand, and the other end was connected to the tribulation clouds. The eighth tribulation lightning caused a connection to form between them. Then, the sea folk discovered that the tribulation clouds that covered the capital city began to wildly surge. This sort of surge was different from the pressure that had descended before. It was filled with a bit of panic and fear. They rubbed their eyes. Was this an illusion? The tribulation clouds represented the will of the world, so how could they be afraid? You must be kidding me. But in the next moment, a sudden scene occurred that refreshed their worldview once more. Within the tribulation clouds that covered the capital city, a part of it cracked open. The several thousand feet wide tribulation cloud in the center was separated from the main body of the tribulation cloud. And it just so happened that the end of the eighth tribulation lightning was connected here. In the blink of an eye, the several thousand feet wide tribulation cloud vanished from sight. The eighth tribulation lightning vanished along with it. No matter how one looked at it, this was like cutting off an arm to survive. Chinyu had actually forced the tribulation cloud to the step. Many sea folk suddenly heard a loud cracking sound, followed by pained cries. Their jaws fell to the ground, and more importantly, Chinyu had used his bare hands to grab the heavenly tribulation and swallow it clean. It was like he had eaten a sweet and juicy sugarcane without using any external force. This was even more terrifying. Heavens! 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 Since when did the human race become so impregnable? There was actually someone who could beat up heavenly tribulation like this. Let alone hearing about it. This had never happened in history. After all, there was a limit to bragging. The sea sovereign's eyes were unprecedentedly solemn. Even with his cultivation, he never imagined that such a scene would occur. Chinyu, this solitude really underestimated you. Soupman shrank his head back and subconsciously took a step back. His majesty was safe and his anger had subsided. He finally regained some of his sanity, but he couldn't help but feel a lingering fear. This brat Chinyu, he was actually fierce to such a degree. Luckily, the old turtle stopped him just now. Otherwise, I would have definitely died. When the tribulation is over, should I leave early? Cough, cough, if we meet again, it will be a bit awkward. Even someone like Soupman, who was so nervous and loyal to the sea sovereign, was thinking about what would happen after crossing tribulation. It could be seen that the vast majority of the sea folk already believed that His Majesty's heavenly tribulation would no longer be a problem. Of course, this was a direct result of the shocking scene of Chinyu grabbing heavenly tribulation with his bare hands like he was eating a sugar cane. Even if the ninth tribulation thunder was even more terrifying, so what? To a freak like Chinyu, it was nothing more than a thicker sugar cane. Perhaps it would even be sweeter. Princess Lushy was overjoyed. But soon, she realized that this joy was also because Chinyu was safe and sound. She couldn't help but grit her teeth. This heartless fellow already had a woman he liked. So why was he still thinking about him? He was just too useless. But as she thought this, her eyes were still a bit blurry as she looked at his figure. A young girl would always yearn for the opposite sex. This was an instinct that had nothing to do with status or status. Within the royal palace, or perhaps the entire capital city, everyone entered into a state of joy. His Majesty had successfully crossed tribulation, and an unprecedented divine soul realm existence would appear amongst the sea races. This was bound to be an enormous benefit to the entire sea races. But at this time, Qin Yu actually frowned. His eyes darkened as he looked at the tribulation clouds that were missing a piece in the middle. He could feel a strange aura. Within his soul space, the little blue lamp's cries became even more intense. Something didn't seem right. The sea sovereign was the one crossing tribulation, and his cultivation was also the highest. He was the first to sense that something was wrong with the tribulation clouds. Slowly, more and more sea folk revealed looks of surprise. Why hadn't the 9th tribulation thunder descended yet? Suddenly, the tribulation clouds that covered the capital city began to contract at an extremely fast speed. After several breaths of time, all that was left over was a massive black fog. It wasn't static. Its surface constantly bulged and changed shape, as if some sort of life form were being bred within, struggling to be born. What was going on? The sea folk all had stunned expressions. Even those who considered themselves knowledgeable and had broad horizons were left dizzy at this time. It was already horrifying to see someone grab heavenly tribulation with their bare hands. Could there be some other special surprise? Could it be that they couldn't withstand being shocked again and again? A light aura sprinkled down from the fog. The sea sovereign stuffily coughed. His body shivered, as if he were carrying an invisible mountain on his back. He was the one crossing tribulation, so he was the first to sense the changes in heavenly tribulation. Turtle Origin, Soupman, and the others all paled. It hadn't even truly appeared, and yet His Majesty found it hard to withstand it. No matter how terrifying the 9th tribulation thunder was, it shouldn't have reached this step. Just what was happening? Perhaps Qin Yu knew. The worlds had always wanted to erase the little blue lamp, but it was trapped by the rules and had been unable to do so. Thus, it had always been waiting for an opportunity. Now it had finally arrived, helping the sea sovereign cross tribulation, and interfering with the birth of his divine soul might have touched upon some restriction of the rules. Thus, the worlds was able to mobilize an even stronger strength and send down a destructive power. Thus, it had acted, leading to the scene before them. Of course, there might be other reasons as well, but this was the most likely one. A roar rang out, carrying with it a boundless aura. It seemed to come from the great desolate, carrying with it the lingering charm of the endless years. But even more, it was cruel and ruthless, bloodthirsty and murderous. Just this roar alone caused the entire capital city and countless sea folk to feel as if they were placed in an azure field. The thick, killing intent caused their complexions to pale. The black fog was as thick as the night. A gap was pierced through and then swallowed up like a whale. The figure being bred within finally appeared in front of them. It was a thunder beast that was over 100 feet tall. In Moon Praying Shrine, when the first 5 golden core heavenly tribulations fused together, the thunder beast that appeared was only a phantom. But this thunder beast was truly flesh and blood. Of course, it was impossible for a thunder beast to be born from the tribulation clouds. But its current appearance and aura was completely the same as the legendary god beast that wielded the wrath of the heavens and earth, the one that ruthlessly destroyed all. It was like the shrinking tribulation clouds had opened up a gate of time and space, allowing this terrifying life form that only existed in legends to cross the river of time and arrive at the sea race capital city to destroy the people it wanted to destroy. The thunder beast lowered its head, its giant eyes locking onto Qin Yu. There was no warmth in them at all. Then its figure moved. In the void, over a dozen thunder beasts appeared, linking together in a line. These were all after-images that appeared because they were too fast. Without giving anyone time to respond, it appeared beside Qin Yu. Then it opened its mouth and swallowed him whole. Ah! Princess Lushy screamed out loud. Gulp! The clear sound of swallowing spread into the ears of countless sea folk, causing them to feel as if this was all unreal. Qin Yu, who had been so awesome and flashy all this time, had ended like this? but feeling the dreadful slaughter aura that the Thunder Beast emitted, there was no need to doubt it. The Thunder Beast lowered its head, its icy cold eyes falling on the sea sovereign. It roared and turned to leave, vanishing from the skies above the capital city. The tribulation clouds had vanished and the Thunder Beast had left. Could this mean that His Majesty had crossed his heavenly tribulation? Chapter 237. The Thunder Beast was just like its name. It was tyrannical like thunder, and it was also as fast as lightning. It flew out of the capital city and into the deep sea. Moments later, it entered a dark abyss at the bottom of the sea. It sunk to the bottom of the abyss and stretched out its body. Runes the size of a knuckle appeared on the surface of its body, swimming about like a living creature. As if an invisible force had descended, the icy cold seawater was forced apart. With the Thunder Beast as the center, a vast expanse of emptiness appeared. If someone saw this scene, they would discover that the seawater was empty. It was shaped like a square cauldron with feet and a mouth. The Thunder Beast closed its eyes, and the leaping lightning on its body receded. The abyss at the bottom of the sea was once again shrouded in darkness, returning to the cold and deathly stillness it had been since ancient times. Qin Yu felt as if he were immersed in a sea of thunder. As far as he could see, everything was a deep purple. Boundless waves roared, each wave carrying with it a fatal, destructive strength. However, the moment the lightning touched his body, it was completely absorbed and did not cause him any harm at all. At this time, Qin Yu could already confirm that the Sea Sovereign's 9th Tribulation Thunder was targeting him. Then, things should not be so simple. Since the world's will was taking action, it should have some degree of confidence in itself. It wouldn't be like it was now, passing strength to the little blue lamp for free. Something must be wrong. As Qin Yu was deep in thought, his body stiffened. He looked up at the runes that appeared on his fingertips, and his complexion became dignified. He had never seen these runes before, but the moment he saw them, a great fear rose up in his soul. Bang! Within his Dantian Sea, the 5-element golden cores erupted and a wild magic power surged forth. But the runes on his fingertips didn't dissipate because of the impact. Rather, they became even clearer. Then, a smear of black ash appeared on his fingertip and spread toward his palm. The area that was invaded by the black-gray color lost all feeling, as if it was no longer a part of his body. Qin Yu's eyes lit up with anger. The black and gray runes were inevitably related to the will of the world. This was its true killing move. As for how these runes had invaded his body, if he was not mistaken, it should be the lightning before him. If the little blue lamp swallowed the tribulation thunder, it would bring the toxic runes into his body. But if he didn't swallow them, he would instantly be blown to smithereens. That's right, the target of the world's will had shifted from the little blue lamp to Qin Yu. Perhaps it had already sensed the change in Qin Yu's relationship with the little blue lamp. After recognizing a master, the little blue lamp would share weal and woe. If Qin Yu died, the little blue lamp would inevitably suffer heavy losses. It could be said that it was a roundabout attack. Qin Yu bit the tip of his tongue and forced himself to calm down. There was no meaning in thinking about these things right now. He had to think of a way to survive the world's slaughter. The grayish-black color spread across his palm and crawled toward his wrist. At the same time, runes also began to appear on his palm. Clearly, he didn't have much time left. Qin Yu wasn't curious at all as to what would happen when the black ash covered his entire body. Nor did he want to know. Rumble, the qi and blood in his body, surged like the tide, rolling and roaring. His full strength erupted, and the black-gray corrosion rate slowed down slightly. But the most this could do was buy Qin Yu a little more time. It was meaningless to the final result. Within his Dantian Sea, the little blue lamp was strangely quiet, as if it didn't know what was happening around it. Qin Yu took a deep breath and suppressed the urge to question it. Perhaps the little blue lamp was thinking about it right now. He wasn't worried that the little blue lamp would stand idly by. The two of them were already one, and if something happened to him, the little blue lamp would inevitably be implicated. Moreover, the world's will's fundamental request was to destroy it. Without the lips, the teeth would be cold. There was no way it wouldn't understand such a simple truth. Suddenly, with a loud cry, the surface of the little blue lamp began to release a faint blue light. Then it fell onto the great Tao base and began to slowly fuse into it. It was like a precious pearl had been embedded into the great Tao base. Qin Yu instantly sensed the changes in his body, as well as the closer connection between him and the little blue lamp. He sighed inwardly. Indeed, there were many tricks in this world. If he wasn't careful, he would fall into one. Recognizing a master was recognizing a master. It was so simple and direct. Who knew that this sort of thing was actually divided into levels? If he were to divide it, entering Qin Yu's Dantian C should be considered an initial master recognition. Fusing into the great Tao base was considered a deeper master recognition. But his intuition told him that this wasn't the end. In other words, even at this step, he still couldn't be considered the little blue lamp's true master. However, sighing was just sighing. After the little blue lamp fused into the great Tao base, there were still some effects. For instance, the ash-black color that spread out from his limbs was forced to stop. Then it was slowly expelled and his control over his body was restored. The crisis had been resolved. Qin Yu let out a sigh of relief, but he subconsciously frowned. The world's will represented the world itself and was a part of the rules. Since it had schemed to deal with the little blue lamp, could it be that it didn't know what methods it had? It had waited so long for a chance to brazenly kill it. Could it be that it had started anticlimactic and ended on a weak note? He always felt that this was too simple. Reality proved that sometimes being too cautious and meticulous wasn't a good thing, because when an accident occurred, he always felt that it was because he had jinxed it. Hum! A loud humming sound echoed out in Qin Yu's soul space. On the surface of his body, where the ash-black color had been expelled, countless runes appeared. Then a gentle but incomparably sharp aura appeared. It was like a cool autumn breeze, carrying with it a faint chill as it brushed past Qin Yu's soul. Originally, this degree of contact shouldn't have caused too much damage to Qin Yu's soul. But the key point was that after the whale sovereign's soul exploded, the cracks in Qin Yu's soul hadn't been repaired. This cool autumn breeze was like the last straw that broke the camel's back. But it also seemed like some sort of meticulous preparation, something specially designed for Qin Yu. Thus, a severe pain surged out from his soul. It was like countless hands were grabbing onto a corner of his soul and forcefully pulling outwards, wanting to tear it into countless pieces. As the pain assaulted him, Qin Yu suddenly understood. He feared that fusing the little blue lamp into the great Tao base and helping him expel the ash-black color was already within the calculations of the world's will. It wanted to strengthen the connection between the little blue lamp and Qin Yu, so that when it killed Qin Yu, it could inflict greater damage to the little blue lamp. So, from start to finish, he had only been a primer, a part of the plan. This left Qin Yu a bit helpless, but also a bit of anticipation. The little blue lamp's initial silence, allowing the ash-black color to invade him, was because it had sensed that something was wrong and had made some sort of preparations. So he might not die. Within the great Tao base, the little blue lamp shined with a brilliant light. It was so blazing that Qin Yu felt as if a great sun had risen in the east, so bright that he couldn't look straight at it. Thus, beneath this light, everything came to a standstill. The runes on the surface of Qin Yu's body, his collapsing soul, the half-opened eyes of the thunder beast outside, and even further out in the sea, there were several strange deep-sea fish that swam over out of curiosity. At this moment, no one knew that deep in the sea, in an abyss at the bottom of the sea, time had come to a standstill. Even if it only covered a radius of several hundred meters, a standstill was still a standstill. Even if it only lasted for a second and the range was only a few inches, it still belonged to an unimaginable scope. What it represented was a boundary and level, one that far surpassed the understanding and imagination of the living beings of this world. Qin Yu's consciousness was clear. Perhaps it was because of his relationship with the little blue lamp, but even in this standstill time his thoughts could still move. As he felt the pain disappear, tumbling waves rose up in his mind. The power to control time, whether it was catalyzing the growth of spiritual plants or swallowing heavenly tribulation, all of this was enough to prove just how incredible and formidable the little blue lamp was. But Qin Yu discovered that he had still underestimated its strength. Just what was it? Qin Yu didn't have time to think. Pain struck him without warning, like a mountain crushing down on him. His consciousness was on the verge of collapse. "Stay awake!" Fragmented sounds spread into Qin Yu's soul. He understood the meaning behind the little blue lamp's words. Life or death depended on this moment. If he could withstand it, he would live. Otherwise, he would die. He had struggled countless times to reach this day. If he were to die like this, would he be willing? Qin Yu didn't know where the strength came from, but he stubbornly defended his mind. No matter how much the pain attacked him, he wished he could tear himself to pieces, but he still clenched his teeth and persisted. He could not give up. He absolutely could not give up. Qin Yu no longer had the mind to pay attention to this. The runes that appeared on the surface of his body began to melt like metal in a blazing inferno, dissipating and fusing into his body. Within his soul space, the horrifying cracks on the surface of Qin Yu's soul began to emit motes of light. Then, the two sides of the cracks began to fuse back together. This was a slow process. After an unknown period of time, the unimaginable pain suddenly vanished. Qin Yu stubbornly persisted until a voice sounded out in his soul. "It's fine." Within the indifference, there seemed to be something else. Qin Yu didn't have time to recognize it. His consciousness fell into darkness. Capital City. In the skies above, countless flowers sprinkled down. In the air, faint syllables began to ring out. The sea sovereign's body floated up on its own. The flowers fused into his body one by one. Countless sea folks' eyes widened. After a brief daze, they were wild with joy. Then, in the entire capital city, all the sea folk fell to their knees. "Congratulations to your majesty for successfully crossing tribulation and advancing to divine soul." Billowing waves of voices shot into the heavens. The sea sovereign closed his eyes. When the last flower entered his body, he opened his eyes. His pupils were warm and bright, as if they contained a strength that could pierce straight into the heart. Who? A wind rose up from the capital city, lifting up the robes of the sea sovereign and causing a faint pressure to spread out in all directions. Turtle Origin's heart shook. He had nearly touched upon His Majesty's previous boundary, so he could clearly feel this aura. Was this divine soul? Soup Man cried tears of joy. For an old man to cry to his heart's content and hell was terrifying. His Majesty had succeeded. He had succeeded. Good, this was far too good. At this time, this was the only thought in his mind, constantly tumbling about. Princess Lushy lowered her head. Everyone around her was cheering for her father's success, so she was also happy. But could they have forgotten that there was a person who had resisted heavenly tribulation for her father just now? As she thought of that person who had been swallowed up by the thunder beast and taken away, she felt her heart clench. Qin Yu, did you die? Chapter 238. Deep Sea Abyss. The icy cold seawater was pitch black, so dark that it was hard to even see one's fingers. Qin Yu lay on the seabed, half covered in mud and sand. His aura was completely gone, as if he were a piece of dead wood. Several strange fish that were born in the deep sea and had lost their eyes because they didn't see light all year round swayed their tails as they swam past him. The tail of one of the strange fish touched Qin Yu's finger. Without any warning, the strange fish directly exploded, like a dark red flower blooming in the dark seawater. The rest of the strange fish, with sharp senses, were so frightened that they fled in all directions. But when they discovered that there was no danger, Their instinctive desire for food overwhelmed their fear. They carefully approached and devoured the flesh and blood of their companions. Then they shook their heads in satisfaction and slowly swam away. Chinyu still lay there with his eyes closed, completely unaware of what was happening outside. But after the scene just now, everyone knew what sort of terrifying strength was shaking within his body that was like dead wood. He was silent like a stone, but there were raging flames within like a volcano. In this icy cold and pitch-black environment, time seemed to drag on, but it also seemed meaningless. After an unknown period of time, in the quiet and clear seabed, a trace of mud suddenly appeared. Not too far away, a carnivorous crab that had been patiently waiting for food to appear suddenly became excited. It had been starving for many days already. But soon, the carnivorous crab revealed a disappointed look. The one stirring up the mud was a big fish. Although it was hungry, it knew it wasn't its match. If it rushed over, it would only be adding more food to the other's meal. Thus, it decided to obediently wait. As the disappointed carnivorous crab lurked back into hiding, the confusion in Chinyu's eyes rapidly faded away. The chaotic memories in his mind finally began to resurface. The capital city, heavenly tribulation, Thunder Beast. It seemed that the Thunder Beast had brought him to this place. If he was alive, the Thunder Beast would naturally die. It was normal for it to disappear. Chinyu rubbed his temples, his body stiffening. He thought back to the pain he had experienced before falling unconscious. Even with his willpower, he absolutely didn't want to recall these memories. Luckily, he had survived. Chinyu sat down cross-legged, sensing the changes in his body. Soon, he revealed a pleasantly surprised smile. Those who survived a calamity were destined for good fortune. These words were indeed true. Within his soul space, his soul that had been severely wounded and covered in cracks had now been restored to its original state. Moreover, it seemed as if there were some different changes. 3 days later, somewhere in the boundless sea, the surface of the water suddenly broke open and Chinyu's figure flew out. As he looked at the great sun above his head, he revealed a light smile. Looking around, the surface of the sea was all the same. There was basically no way to determine his position. But to Chinyu, this was actually extremely simple. With a thought, a sea map appeared above his head and slowly unfurled. Chinyu looked around and determined his position. After locking onto the position of the continent, he put away the sea chart and stepped forwards, turning into a beam of light that howled away. There was a considerable distance between this place and the sea race's capital city. Of course, even if it was close, he couldn't return there. Without accident, the sea sovereign had already reached the divine soul realm. If he were to go back on his word, there would be no one he could reason with. It was better to just leave. However, there was no way to ask the priests about the key. Whoosh! A shocking rainbow streaked across the sky. 1 month later, when the endless coastline appeared in his line of sight, Chinyu smiled. He had finally returned. The location he chose wasn't too far from the fishing village that Little C had entered. Thinking about it, Chinyu concealed his aura and entered the fishing village. Little C had indeed lived here for a period of time, but around 3 months ago, she had left and no one knew where she went. Chinyu smiled. He thanked the weather-beaten old woman in front of him and turned to leave. He had no intention of disturbing Little C's life to begin with, but since she had already left, he might never see her again in this life. He hoped that she lived a happy life. After leaving the range of the coast, the number of cultivators gradually increased. Chinyu soon discovered that the continent was filled with a tense atmosphere. And indeed, after paying a bit more attention, he found the crux of the problem. The demonic path and Immortal Eclipse Valley were like fire and water. As for the exact cause, there was no way to verify it. All he knew was that both sides had suffered serious casualties and were truly enraged. The influence of the demonic path was undoubtedly the greatest in all directions. Only if all the righteous path sects joined forces would they be able to contend with them. Immortal Eclipse Valley was known as the #1 immortal sect. They had started with pills and had a long inheritance. It was unknown just how much wealth they had accumulated and how many connections they had. They were similarly able to look down on all others. When these two sides began to fight amongst each other, it naturally had far-reaching consequences. It was understandable that they were in the current situation. Qin Yu bitterly smiled when he had casually killed bloodthirsty demon. Small skirmishes had arisen between Immortal Eclipse Valley and the demonic path. If the current situation was said to be caused by the events of the past, then that was his responsibility. But thinking about it carefully, he didn't need to worry too much. Immortal Eclipse Valley had Pill Crucible, Jiang Li, Daoist Wang, and the others guarding it. Even the demonic path wouldn't be able to easily shake their foundation. In the future, he would think of a way to settle this matter and then make compensation. Since Qin Yu entered the sea region, besides the delays he had encountered along the way, a full year had passed. He had to admit that the reason he sped up was because of the news he obtained from that mysterious cultivator at Heavenseek Pavilion. Breaking through his demon body and reaching nascent soul was the most urgent matter at hand. Once he succeeded, he would no longer have to fear anything in this world. So, even if he dreaded Heavenseek Pavilion in his heart, Qin Yu still decided to make another trip there. Heavenseek Pavilion was extremely famous. They were spread throughout the Southern Empire and Northern Dynasty. As long as there was a sizable cultivator city, they would have a branch. If he wanted to find them, it would be a simple matter. 2 days later, Qin Yu stepped into Heavenseek Pavilion. He didn't hide his identity, so not long after he entered, a manager personally came out to greet him. "You recognize me?" The dark-skinned, middle-aged cultivator didn't deny it. He cupped his hands together and said, "A year ago I received a notice from headquarters that once Lord Qin Yu arrived, you must be treated as an honored guest. Lord, please wait a moment. I have already passed on the news of your arrival and will soon receive a response." Qin Yu nodded, no longer speaking. In a luxurious private room, Qin Yu was drinking fragrant tea. The maid serving him wore a long dress that accentuated her graceful figure. Her eyes were lowered and her cheeks were flushed red, as if she were waiting for him to do as he pleased. If there really was a need, she wouldn't refuse. Unfortunately, Qin Yu really only drank tea. Besides looking up at her at the beginning, there was nothing unusual about him. The maid couldn't help but bite her lips. Between her eyebrows, there was just the right amount of hidden bitterness. Not only could she express her thoughts, but she also wouldn't arouse the disgust of others. Instead, she seemed even more pitiful. Unfortunately, it was useless. An hour later, there was a knock on the door from outside. A young man walked in, a warm smile on his face. His eyes were calm and gentle. He cupped his hands together and said, "Fellow Taoist Qin Yu is truly a man of his word." Qin Yu lightly said, "Let's get down to business." The young man didn't care about his indifference. He waved his hand and the kneeling maid stood up. She walked out and closed the door behind her. Fellow Taoist Qin Yu is a straightforward person, so I will get straight to the point. I wonder if fellow Taoist has heard news about the Gold noble family? Qin Yu frowned. Gold noble family? The young man sat down and poured himself a cup of tea. It's normal that fellow Taoist Qin Yu doesn't know. The Gold noble family is hidden extremely deeply. Besides a small number of people, no one knows of their existence. However, if one carefully considers it, the Gold noble family should be one of the most formidable influences in the Southern Empire and Northern Dynasty. He smiled. Fellow Taoist, don't be anxious. Since I mentioned it, I will definitely give you a satisfactory answer. However, as the price, I hope that fellow Taoist Qin Yu can agree to one thing in the future. Qin Yu frowned. He didn't come to the Heavenseek Pavilion Branch Division today, but this young man had still appeared in such a short period of time. It was impossible to know what this meant, but Qin Yu still felt a bit more dread in his heart. The young man lightly said, "Fellow Taoist Qin Yu, there is no need to worry. My request is certainly within the scope of your ability, and I won't make things difficult for you. Otherwise, you can refuse." Qin Yu thought for a moment and nodded. "All right, I agree." The young man smiled. The Gold noble family has a mysterious origin. In the rumors, they are related to the land of divinity and demons. This family is surnamed Ning, and they live in the Southern Empire, but they aren't located anywhere in the Southern Empire. Qin Yu's mind buzzed. Ning, their surname was Ning. Qin Yu immediately thought of Ningling. She had a formidable talent, a terrifying bloodline, and an incomparably mysterious background. Could she be someone from the Ning family? Qin Yu took a deep breath and suppressed his rising and falling thoughts. He continued to listen. The young man spoke a great deal, mixed with comments and praises of the Gold noble family. But in summary, there was only one sentence. The Gold noble family had a method to help Qin Yu break through his shackles and reach nascent soul. How do I obtain it? The young man smiled. Before long, the Gold noble family will be recruiting a new batch of servants in Ning City. Fellow Taoist Qin Yu, please think of a way to enter. The opportunity will soon appear. Qin Yu slowly said, "Can't you speak plainly?" The young man smiled. "There are some words that won't come true once spoken. But I won't lie to you. I ask fellow Taoist Qin Yu to believe me." Qin Yu's eyes were sharp. "I hope so." He stood up and pushed open the door to leave. As for the reward, he had already given it to him just now. The young man seemed to be in a very good mood. He wasn't in a hurry to leave and sat down to drink some tea. Soon, the door was pushed open once more, and the docile maid walked in with a light expression. There was an indifference in her eyes, and there wasn't any trace of her previous soft and gentle temperament. This servant is incompetent and failed to complete master's orders. I ask master to punish me. The young man smiled. Qin Yu is a cautious person. He is already suspicious of Heaven's Seek Pavilion, so he naturally won't reveal any flaws. But I have already done what I should. All I need to do is wait. The maid furrowed her eyebrows. Is master really confident? The young man sighed. I've already had enough of these days. Even if there is only a 50% chance, I still have to try. He waved his hand, putting this matter behind him. How is the current situation? Reporting to master, the conflict between the demonic path and Immortal Eclipse Valley is becoming increasingly serious. There is no turning back. Pass down the order for everyone to withdraw. There is no need for us to interfere any longer. Leaving Heaven's Seek Pavilion, Qin Yu shot into the skies. His eyes flashed and his thoughts raced. There was definitely a problem with Heaven's Seek Pavilion in this matter. But right now, no matter what Heaven's Seek Pavilion was planning, in order to break into nascent soul, he could only raise his vigilance and wait. Ning City, Ning Family Whoosh. Chapter 239. Genius 1 Second, remember if you want to go. This is the web that provides you with wonderful novels to read. To the east of the Southern Empire, there was a vast and fertile plain that spanned thousands of miles. There was a great city that stood tall on the ground. Its name was Ning, and it maintained balance in all directions. Ning City lived up to its name. It had been peaceful for over 1,000 years and hadn't experienced any turmoil or destruction. Because of this, it became increasingly prosperous, and the wealth it had accumulated was an astronomical figure. This naturally attracted many covetous eyes. But no matter how the surrounding forces changed, Ning City remained calm and quiet, so calm that it left others in awe. Over time, even though no one knew how deep the waters were, no one dared to have any ideas about it. But as time passed, rumors began to spread. It was said that behind Ning City stood a family that lived in seclusion, and their strength was unfathomably formidable. This was just a rumor, and there was no concrete evidence. However, every 20 years, the Ning Mansion in Ning City would select a batch of outstanding young cultivators in the name of recruiting servants. Among them, the outstanding ones would gradually disappear in a short period of time. Speaking of which, This could be considered a somewhat horrifying matter. But from time to time, there would be 1 or 2 cultivators that were selected in the early years of the Ning Mansion. Their cultivations were unfathomably deep, and they wielded great authority within the Ning Mansion. Because of all of this, in addition to the speculations of all parties, there were gradually rumors that there was a great family that lived in seclusion in Ning City. Ning Mansion recruited servants once every 20 years. This was in order to find suitable people for this great family that lived in seclusion. Cultivators with a noble background certainly wouldn't consider becoming a servant for a better future. But to those cultivators that had no one to rely on, this was an opportunity. If they could grasp it, they might have some achievements in the future. Of course, there were risks. After all, no one knew where they would be brought to after being selected. What would they do? But taking 10,000 steps back, even if they weren't selected, entering Ning City's Ning Mansion was still a good choice for many people. Ning Mansion was the ruler of Ning City. As the 20-year period approached, Ning Mansion posted a notice to select servants. Ning City's bustling city became much livelier. Many cultivators rushed over from all over, hoping to find a lucky chance in this bustling city. Sueda's family had been living in Peace City for generations. They were the most experienced family in the city. Although they weren't considered as powerful, their status wasn't low either. Of course, a large part of the status was because Sueda's family had the qualifications to recommend servants to the Ning Mansion. And in these past years, many of them had been hired. Everyone wasn't mistaken. When the Ning Mansion recruited servants, they indeed needed to be recommended. Not just any random cat or dog could participate. If they wanted a clean background, they needed someone to vouch for them. If there weren't even these security measures, how could the secrets hidden within the Ning Mansion be preserved to this day? They would have long been made known to the entire world. Sueda was a name that had been passed down from more than 1,000 years ago to the present day. As long as one became the family head, their original name would immediately become invalid, and they would only be called Sueda. Therefore, this name was quite famous in Peace City. There were very few people who didn't know this name. Where did Master Su go today? Master Su, have you taken a liking to that nephew of mine? His character and foundation are unquestionable. Sueda, how many people are you going to recommend this time? That's right, the name Sueda wasn't something that just anyone had the qualifications to call out. This was called status and status. Thin, medium height, grizzled hair. This was the current Sueda. At this time, there was a light smile on his lips as he greeted everyone. Behind him followed a black-robed youth. His appearance couldn't be considered handsome, but his eyes were pitch black and bright. He was spirited, giving off a favorable impression. Sueda, where did you bring this young man back? On the second floor of the restaurant, near the window, the bald fatty had a surprised expression. He had heard that the Su family had already decided on a candidate list. Sueda smiled. This is a junior from a distant relative of mine. He has some talent in alchemy, so I sent him over to see if he can enter the eyes of the Ning Mansion. As he spoke, he twirled his beard, a smug look on his face. As expected, there was a loud gasp from the crowd, envy in their eyes. No wonder the Su family hadn't fallen for so many years. Their methods were truly brilliant. They could even find a young man with alchemy talent. Even in the Ning Mansion, alchemists were always respected. From this, it could be seen that Sueda had no chance of being selected. After exchanging some pleasantries and gaining enough attention, Sueda chuckled and left with the black-robed youth. When they arrived home, the Su family was thrown into chaos. After suddenly bringing back a complete stranger, the entire Su family felt a bit restless. However, with Sueda's endorsement, the situation soon calmed down. Their patriarch was smarter than a monkey, so he naturally wouldn't make any mistakes. The youth that entered the Su family with the name of a distant relative was quickly settled down. All that was left was to wait for the Ning Mansion to accept servants. Sitting in a simple and clean room, The black-robed youth revealed a helpless smile. With his current status, doing these things was a bit degrading. But in front of the great Tao of nascent soul, if he was degrading, then so be it. Come. Qin Yu followed behind in a daze. After entering the hidden door, there was a passage with rooms on both sides. The old man led the way to the second room on the left. What is your name? Qin Ning. What followed was a series of boring questions and answers. What Qin Yu said was the same as the information in the old man's hands. A moment later, after answering the last question, the old man smiled and suddenly drew backwards. At the same time, he shouted, "Men, capture him!" Qin Yu sat where he was, his eyes unfocused, as if he didn't know what was happening, and in the room no one appeared. The old man looked over several times and then nodded. His face became tranquil once more, and he lowered his head to record the information into a jade slip. When the 5 people were sent back to their rooms and regained their composure, the hidden door had already closed, as if nothing had happened. A steward pushed open the door and brought them back. However, each of them had a jade card in their hands. After passing the examination, they had the qualifications to participate in the examination. As for whether or not they could be chosen, that would depend on their own abilities. You are called Qin Ning? Behind the table, an old man with messy hair and red eyes looked extremely sloppy. He looked over impatiently. He was in the middle of refining a pill and was suddenly interrupted to come out to manage the examination. Naturally, he wasn't in a good mood. Qin Yu bowed. Yes. All right, don't waste any more time. Here are the materials for a minor spirit pill. The pill furnace is over there. Go. After Alchemist Zhang finished speaking, he closed his eyes and began to think about alchemy. Soon his mind began to wander off. Just as he was thinking about the most interesting part and was about to find the root cause of his continuous failures, he was suddenly interrupted. Alchemist Zhang angrily opened his eyes. What are you doing? As for what was said just now, he didn't hear it at all. Qin Yu was a bit helpless. He repeated himself. Grandmaster, I've finished refining. Alchemist Zhang looked at the hourglass on the table. It wasn't even halfway done. A bit of surprise appeared in his eyes. He said, "Give me the pill." Qin Yu handed over a jade bottle with both hands. He opened it and poured it out. The pill was still warm and the heat hadn't yet dissipated. It was clear it had just been refined and the quality was actually quite good. He couldn't tell that this boy's alchemy foundation was actually quite good. What grade are you at? Reporting to Grandmaster, if I am lucky, I can refine a 2nd grade pill. A 2nd grade alchemist was already quite good. In a small sect, their status was comparable to an elder's, and they could live a carefree life. And most importantly, this boy was so young, and yet he was able to resist temptation and come to Ning Mansion. It was clear that he was ambitious. Alchemist Zhang was satisfied with this. Those of his generation who walked the path of alchemy needed to be brave and diligent, not letting down their own talent. You have passed. After today, you will follow me and work for me. His tone was a bit warmer. Qin Yu cupped his hands together. Then the selection of servants ended. This wasn't anything to be surprised about. With Qin Yu's cultivation, if he couldn't even pass such a minor scene, he might as well find a block of tofu and kill himself. Thus, from today onwards, there was a new 2nd grade alchemist in Ning Mansion. Alchemists had a transcendent status, and their treatment was always a level higher. Qin Yu's cultivation as a 2nd grade alchemist was comparable to the Golden Core realm. He had his own courtyard, a generous monthly salary, and there was even a beautiful young girl who took care of his daily needs. Of course, if he wanted to do something else, that was fine too. No one knew what Alchemist Zhang's name was, but he was someone who loved alchemy and had an irritable temper. He didn't care about his appearance and often went to his alchemy room, not coming out for 10 days to half a month. His actions naturally caused those around him to complain, but they couldn't voice any complaints, otherwise they would be cursed at. Luckily, there was a young man named Qin Ning who had recently arrived. He was a very amiable person and had a second-grade alchemist cultivation at such a young age. His basic skills were incomparably solid, and he handled all sorts of alchemy matters with ease. Ever since he arrived, the pressure on everyone lessened a great deal. In particular, after alchemist Zhang appointed Qinyu as his assistant in alchemy, everyone's days became much more relaxed, and they were all overjoyed. Alchemist Zhang was very satisfied with Qinyu. He even had thoughts of taking him in as a disciple. But after thinking about it for a moment, he gently sighed and suppressed this thought. Qinyu was young, and yet he had a second-grade cultivation. There was no need to say anything about his talent, and his foundation in alchemy was extremely solid. Looking at his actions, he was calm and collected. For such an outstanding young man to come to Ning Mansion, it was clear he had great ambitions. A month later, Alchemist Zhang called out to Qinyu, who had just finished his work and was about to leave. "I don't want to let you go, but I can't ruin your future. The mansion has already noticed you, so you should prepare yourself." Qinyu bowed. "Thank you, Grandmaster, for the reminder." He turned and left, a smile on his face. The step of entering the gold, noble family had been completed. Chapter 240. On the third day after he received news from Alchemist Zhang, Qinyu gained a new friend in the Ning Mansion. Her name was July, and she was a young miss of the mansion. She said that her family had encountered some misfortune, so she was staying with the Ning family. The reason he met Chiyue was because the maid who took care of her had fallen ill, and she had come to his alchemy room to ask for medicine. Now that the maid's illness was under control, it could be seen that July was very grateful. She quickly became close to Qinyu. She was a beautiful young woman with a soft and delicate temperament that easily won the favor of others. It wasn't long before the two of them felt as if they had been friends for many years. "I brewed the chicken soup myself. It's a pity that I don't have any ingredients on hand. Otherwise, the taste would be even better. Now, I can only use the fragrance of the chicken soup itself," Chiyue said with a smile. Qinyu smiled. "It's delicious." Chiyue stood up. "I know you're very busy. Alchemist Zhang is really too much. It's fine if he's risking his life. But why did he have to drag you along with him? I can't even speak a few words with him." Perhaps she felt that the meaning revealed in her words was too straightforward. A faint blush appeared on her fair and delicate cheeks. She waved her hand and hurriedly left. Qinyu finished the chicken soup in the porcelain cup and laid down the bowl. He thought for a moment and then revealed a helpless smile. July was too enthusiastic. Although it could be said that he had helped save the maid Shaoqing, and there was a reason for them to be close. If something was wrong, it was still wrong. It was not good to lie to himself. "Sure enough, it's all fake that I'm too charming. Don't think too much about it. I'll just wash up and sleep." When the serving maid came in, Qinyu composed himself. He stood up and said, "Wait a moment and wash yourself clean. Then send it back to Miss July." "Yes." Qinyu arrived at the alchemy room. He greeted several people with a smile and then began to work. It was orderly, steady, and calm, no different from before. Time passed. From the time he had known Chiyue until now, almost a month had passed. The girl's attitude towards Qinyu had become much warmer and warmer. Of course, there was a reason for this. One day, when Qinyu returned to his residence, he encountered Chiyue being troubled by the Ning Mansion steward. He spoke a few words, and with his status as a second-grade alchemist, the steward resentfully withdrew. Feeling the attachment in July's eyes, Qinyu smiled inwardly. It was about time. 2 days later, Ning Mansion was burglarized. It seemed that something extremely valuable had been lost, and the mansion was constantly searched. When Qinyu was in the alchemy room, he was able to hear a few words. It was said that the Ning Mansion had lost an extremely precious treasure that would be greatly beneficial to one's cultivation. It was night, deep in the darkness. The guest that came to Qinyu's courtyard was July. "Qin Ning, help me." Just this sentence alone was enough to move a person's heart. The girl's eyes were glistening with tears, and her expression was bitter and fearful. "Chin, you let her in. What's wrong?" July bit her lip. "I'm the one who stole it." Her face flushed red and her expression became increasingly sorrowful. "But this was originally something that belonged to my family. I brought it into the mansion in the past, but it was forcefully taken away by the Ning family. I just want to take back what belongs to me." Chin Yu frowned. "July, the mansion will not listen to your explanation." "I know. That is why I have to leave." July's eyes brightened. "Qi Ning, are you willing to take me with you? You should know how I feel. Take me away from here, and I'll give you both my family heirloom and myself." By the time she finished speaking, the girl's pretty face was already boiling hot. Chin Yu couldn't help but acknowledge that July was extremely charming. Her "I'm in love with you" appearance made it hard for him to maintain his composure. But he already knew. He shook his head. "July, I'm sorry, but I cannot agree." July's complexion instantly paled. Her eyes were filled with disbelief, and her sorrow was enough to make one's heart tremble. Just as she was about to say something, Chin Yu stepped forward and struck her neck. The girl fainted, all her words left in her stomach. Chin Yu opened the door and woke up the maid. He had her tell the mansion that the thief had been found. The Ning mansion acted quickly. So, when July woke up, she found herself locked up in prison. The moment she opened her eyes, she was confused for a moment. Then, she furrowed her eyebrows and revealed a thoughtful expression. "July, I never thought you would be directly knocked unconscious. This is really—" Ning Iran thought for a moment. He didn't know how to describe it, so he simply stopped here. July lightly said, "Young master, there is no need to feel awkward. I know the rules. Since I've been exposed, I should just leave the mansion." She paused for a moment, her voice heavy. "But I'm not willing." Ning Iran frowned. "What do you mean?" "I want to try again. I ask young master to help me." Ning Iran was silent for a moment. Then he nodded. Thus, Chin Yu received news that the imprisoned July made a request to see him. Thinking about it, Chin Yu didn't refuse. He went to the Ning mansion's dungeon. July leaned against a stone wall. Her thin and weak body was curled up like a wounded little beast. "Chin Ning, your heart is so hard." A faint sigh stirred the heart. Chin Yu cupped his hands together. "I have wronged you in this matter. But since I entered the Ning mansion, I am also a member of the mansion. It is impossible for me to harm the interests of the Ning mansion." July bitterly smiled. "But do you know what treasure I obtained? With it, there is no need for you to stay in the Ning mansion. I know that you are a proud person with great ambitions. This was your best chance, but you gave it up, and also me. Chin Ning, do you really not have even the slightest bit of friendship towards me in your heart?" Chin Yu sighed. "There are things a gentleman can do and cannot do. I know that what July says is the truth, but I cannot do it. I can only apologize." At this point, the dungeon fell silent. July lowered her head. It was unknown what she was thinking. After a long time, she giggled and walked out from the corner of the wall. She straightened her back and said, "When did you realize it?" Chin Yu frowned. "July, what is the meaning of this?" "Humph, there is no one else here, so why bother pretending? I have already done everything I can and spent an entire month. If you weren't already on guard, how could you possibly be so cruel to me?" July's delicate and gentle air vanished, replaced with a bit more pride and arrogance. "I have nothing to say about falling into your hands this time, but for better or worse, you should at least let me know just where I gave myself away. Just consider it for the sake of the delicious food I sent you these past days." Chin Yu's complexion paled and his breathing became rapid. He had a look of anger, as if he had suddenly realized he had been played with. "July, I never imagined that you were someone sent by the mansion to probe me. I was filled with pain and guilt before, but it turns out that I had eyes but failed to see and misjudged you." He flicked his sleeves and left. In the dungeon, July was stunned. She watched helplessly as he neatly walked away. After a long time, she gently sighed. Whether it was because Qi Ning was already on guard or because he truly didn't know anything, she was convinced. Facts spoke louder than words. Ning Yiran appeared from somewhere. July, do you have anything to say? July nodded. I ask young master to let me leave the mansion. Ning Yiran shook his head. Now, I will give you a second choice. Think about it and then give me a reply. Qin Yu left the dungeon, his face dark and gloomy. He returned to his small courtyard and closed the door. He poured a cup of tea, took a sip, and then smashed the teacup to the ground. In the dark of night, the sound of the teacup shattering into pieces was grating to the ears. The maid that was carefully listening to the sound shrank back and tiptoed away. Qin Yu's lips curved up in a smile. Now that things had come this far, it was enough. The Ning family was indeed cautious, but Qin Yu wasn't that old. In order to maintain their current status, the Ning family was far more cautious than he imagined. Father, the test results prove that there is no problem with Qin Ning. In fact, he can even be called outstanding. Ning Yiran subconsciously frowned. But I don't know why, but I feel that something is wrong. Ning Mingxuan's eyes flashed. Why? I don't know. Perhaps it's because July failed. Ning Yiran thought about it. Qi Ning had actually struck her unconscious, and he couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Perhaps it was because of this that he felt uneasy in his heart. Ning Mingxian was silent for a moment. Then he slowly said, "The list of names is given by the main family. We are only responsible for the test. Since there is no problem with Qi Ning, it wouldn't be good to cross him off." Ning Yiran was worried. But what if Qi Ning only has a foundation, establishment, cultivation? Even if he has second thoughts, what can he do if he enters the main family? Ning Mingxian lightly said. However, before he enters the main family, spread some rumors and see how he responds. Ning Yiran cupped his hands together. I understand. The next day, there were people in Ning Mansion who said that the new alchemy master, Qi Ning, had handed over Miss July for his own future. He had obtained the trust of the mansion's lords and was likely to be placed in an important position. Although it was reasonable to help the mansion catch a thief, the girl liked him and trusted him, yet he ended up in such a state. This didn't seem right. Thus, Qin Yu soon discovered that some of the eyes that fell on him became filled with contempt and indifference. In the alchemy room, the several people that were on good terms with him also became distant. For his own future, he was willing to sacrifice the woman that liked him. Who would be willing to be close to such a cold and callous person? Qin Yu maintained his composure. He sighed inwardly. July had been arranged by Ning Mansion, and now rumors were spreading everywhere. It was clear things weren't as simple as they seemed. Indeed, there were far too many intelligent people in this world, and they weren't easy to fool. But looking at the current situation, Ning Mansion should still have some misgivings about him. But there was no proof. They allowed the rumors to spread because they wanted to see his reaction and then make a judgment. Qin Yu thought for a moment and decided to stir up a bit of a ruckus. He was a young man after all. If he remained silent after being wronged, that would be abnormal. In 2 days, because of the rumors, he had 2 minor conflicts with others. He didn't know how, but Alchemist Zhang found out. But he specifically called Qin Yu over. Be careful and don't stir up any trouble. These days might be able to change your life. Qin Yu gratefully nodded. He walked out the door with a smile. 5 days later, the steward of Ning Mansion brought Qin Yu away. Not long after, he saw the master of this mansion. Ning Mingxian lightly said, Qin Ning, my Ning family has a secret place that can help cultivators cultivate. You have been chosen to enter. You will leave tomorrow, so make some preparations. Qin Yu was overjoyed. After watching him leave, Ning Mingxian turned his head. It looks like there aren't any problems. Ning Yiran nodded. In these past days, he had been paying attention to Qin Yu's performance. There hadn't been the slightest flaw. Chapter 241. Genius 1 second remember, providing you with wonderful novels to read. The next day, Qin Yu tidied himself up. Under the guidance of the Ning Mansion's steward, he arrived at a common-looking side courtyard. Of course, with the Ning Mansion's status and influence, even if it was only a side courtyard, it was still luxurious. The steward spoke a few words and then cupped his hands together in farewell. After taking several steps away, his eyes revealed a bit of contempt. To sell out a woman in order to obtain qualifications, it was truly despicable. Of course, he wouldn't admit to the sour taste in his heart. The side courtyard had been temporarily sealed off, and there were no guards at the entrance. When Qin Yu entered, there were already over a dozen people in the small but exquisite courtyard. They stood beneath a tree filled with pink flowers, smiling and talking to each other. Whether it was a man or a woman, there was a bit of apprehension in their eyes, but there was even more pride and excitement. When Qin Yu appeared, the relaxed and lively atmosphere suddenly froze. Many eyes revealed indifference, criticism, and even a bit of ridicule. To sell out a woman, and a woman that liked him at that, it was hard to imagine that such a person could stand together with them. Of course, those that could appear here couldn't be said to be smart, but none of them were stupid. They swept their eyes over him several times before looking away. Then they continued their previous topic, chatting as if Qin Yu's existence was nothing but air. Perhaps this sort of indifference was the greatest mockery. Many people felt a bit of comfort in their hearts. Qin Yu certainly knew just what was going on. He smiled inwardly and walked over to the corner where he stood. All he wanted was to enter the gold, noble family. It didn't matter what these people thought of him. Glancing over, many people noticed Qin Yu's calm demeanor. After a moment of surprise, they sneered. This skin was really thick. The people from the Ning Mansion arrived. The one leading them was someone Qin Yu didn't recognize. He was a middle-aged man with a dignified and imposing aura. Ning Iran and a group of 16 Ning family juniors followed behind him. All of you wait here. We will leave in an hour. After speaking, the middle-aged man entered the main hall of the courtyard. Although there were no guards there, anyone with a bit of eyesight could feel a sharp and fierce aura emanating from the main hall. There was definitely a master standing guard here. Greetings, young Master Ning. Young Master Iran is coming with us? This is great. Ning Lo, I heard that he's only 15 years old this year. He's an incredible genius of the Ning Mansion and is highly regarded. It was normal for everyone to be pleasantly surprised. If these outstanding juniors of the Ning Mansion participated, it meant that their thoughts were likely true. At the very least, there wouldn't be any danger. The Ning Mansion juniors all had faint expressions. For them to appear here, they had already been informed of the greatest secret of the clan. After the shock, now was the time to be proud and complacent. Subconsciously, there was a hint of pride in his actions. So, our Ning family is so awesome, looking at the young cultivators selected from the mansion. Although these people were not bad, they could not be compared to them. They were destined to only be supporting characters. Ning Iran, on the other hand, had a gentle smile on his face as he nodded to the others. Suddenly, there was a sneer behind him. Is this the Qin Ning who helped the mansion catch the thief? Alchemist Qin? His words were filled with malice. Countless eyes instantly focused on him. After a short moment of surprise, they were immediately filled with joy. They didn't want to provoke Qin Yu, but the Ning family cultivators clearly had no scruples. His skin was torn off in front of everyone. Let's see if he still has the face to remain calm. Ning Iran's eyes flashed. With his personality, he should have stopped the juniors of the clan, but as he thought about it, he chose to remain silent. In the eyes of others, this was a clear signal. The young master of the Ning Mansion also didn't like Qin Yu. Then what else was there to scruple about? Alchemist Qin caught the thief and was recognized by the mansion lords, allowing him to obtain the qualifications to participate today. What a good method. That's right. I fear there aren't many people who can be as decisive as Alchemist Qin. With Alchemist Qin's temperament, he will surely have great achievements in the future. Perhaps we will need to look after him in the future. Mockery and ridicule washed over them. These were all young people. While there might be some that were shrewd, there weren't many. Ning Yiran watched for a long time. Seeing no counterattack, Qin Yu's expression was light, as if he didn't hear these words at all. This was indeed the best way to deal with them. If he tried to argue, he would only be humiliated further. That's enough. Alchemist Qin is loyal to my Ning mansion, so it is only right that he be rewarded. Ning Yiran said. As the person who would control the future of the Ning mansion, the courtyard immediately quieted down. A middle-aged man walked out from the main hall. He lightly said, "Come in." Ning Yiran took a deep breath, a solemn expression on his face. Behind him were the Ning family juniors, and further behind them were the dozen or so young cultivators that had been chosen. Qin Yu tactfully fell behind, happy that no one was provoking him. On the floor of the main hall, the transmission array had been calibrated. Spiritual strength flowed through the array formation, emitting a low hum. "Follow me." The middle-aged man was the first to step in. The group of youths all revealed excited expressions as they entered the transmission array. A blinding light flashed and space twisted. The figures of the people in the array formation vanished. There was a feeling of space being torn apart all around them. Luckily, it disappeared soon and their field of vision brightened. What appeared in their line of sight was a beautiful valley. Sunlight sprinkled down from above without any obstruction, and the trees were lush and full of life. But what was strange was that besides the wind rustling the leaves, there was nothing but a deathly silence. Qin Yu subconsciously furrowed his eyebrows. This valley wasn't ordinary at all. His soul was incomparably powerful. He could faintly feel an invisible, binding strength shrouding this place. Without a doubt, this was definitely related to the Gold noble family. Did they live here? Just as this thought appeared, he saw the middle-aged man leading the way step into the valley. Soon, a pool appeared in front of them. It was 70 to 80 feet wide and oval in shape. The water was clear, and there were aquatic plants growing at the bottom. There were no fish or shrimp. The middle-aged man took out an ancient jade from his chest and tossed it into the pool. Then an astonishing scene occurred. The water in the pool seemed to boil, violently tumbling about. Then a door in the water appeared. Through it, one could see what was on the other side. It was also a valley and the same pool. The two were completely the same, like a reflection, but there were no people standing near the pool on the other side, so it wasn't a shadow. Besides Ning Yiran, everyone else revealed shocked expressions. Even Qin Yu's eyes brightened. Before this, he hadn't noticed anything strange about this pool at all. Was this the method of the Gold noble family? It was truly fierce. The middle-aged man turned around. "Now go in." Ning Yiran respectfully bowed and was the first to step in. Qin Yu was still the last. As his feet landed on the ground, he looked back. Through the water door, he could see the middle-aged man standing upside down. He waved his hand, and the ancient jade flew into his hand. The water door vanished with it, and the pool in front of him became unremarkable. But everyone knew that there was a great secret hidden in this pool. Shwa, shwa. Two figures flew over, landing in front of the crowd. They were both young, but their auras left one startled. Golden core perfection. One more step and they could reach nascent soul. Ning Yiran hurriedly bowed. Outer Branch Ning Mansion's Ning Yiran greets two clan brothers. In the outside world, he was a high and lofty young master of the Ning family. He was destined to inherit great power and status. But in the main clan, he was only a relatively outstanding Outer Branch junior disciple. His father had solemnly warned him that he had to be respectful and couldn't be arrogant in his heart. Behind him, the young cultivators who didn't know the truth all revealed looks of ecstasy. It was true, the rumors were true. Across from them, the young cultivator on the left swept his eyes around and frowned. In these past years, the people you send over are getting worse and worse. Ning Iran respectfully said, "The outer branch has failed in handling matters. I am willing to accept punishment." The young cultivator waved his hand. "This is the matter of the outer branch, elder. It isn't my place to speak. Let's go. We have other matters to attend to." He turned and walked away. As for the other person, he didn't speak from start to finish. Ning Iran relaxed a little. The other party didn't have any intention of making things difficult for him. But as he thought of his words, he couldn't help but bitterly smile. It wasn't that the people chosen by the Ning mansion weren't good enough, but that geniuses could be seen everywhere in the main family. Compared to them, they were indeed much worse. This was the truth. There was no way to argue with it. Qin Yu lowered his head, as if in awe and fear. His lowered eyes hid the shock in them. He swept his gaze over the ground. The endless plains, the rolling mountain ranges, the roaring rivers, everything was the same. But everything was no longer the same. Every breath he took was pure heaven and earth's spiritual strength. It was several times richer than in Immortal Eclipse Valley. Moreover, what surprised him even more was the fluctuations coming from the little blue lamp. These fluctuations were transmitted into the great Tao base. Then, deep in Qin Yu's mind, an image appeared. It was a dot of light floating in the darkness. Thus, he knew that this dot of light was where he was right now. No wonder that young man from Heaven Seek Pavilion had said that the Gold noble family lived in the Southern Empire, but they weren't located anywhere in the Southern Empire. Because this place was an independent spatial fragment, this surpassed Qin Yu's understanding. He never imagined that such a place existed in this world, and what was even more astonishing was that the Gold noble family could live here. It was no wonder that Heaven Seek Pavilion would call them one of the strongest influences. Just what he saw was enough to convince him. Qin Yu didn't dare to recklessly look around, but based on what he saw, he could guess that this spatial fragment was at least a fifth the size of the Southern Empire. This area was simply astonishing. Soon, signs of people began to appear. There were many villages and towns on the ground, but their group didn't stop until a mountain city appeared in front of them. The reason it was called this was because this city was completely built around the mountain. The buildings at the bottom were densely packed, and the higher they went, the more sparse they became. The residences were larger, more luxurious, and more exquisite. Many of them were hidden in the fog, giving off the feeling of immortals living here. When they were still some distance from the mountain city, the two young men leading the way landed. They were still the ones who spoke before. They pointed at a large stone in front of them and said, "This is the mountain Overlook Stone. All disciples below the Golden Core Realm are forbidden from flying. Remember this well. Otherwise, if you provoke any trouble in the future, you will have to bear it yourself." As the leader of the group, Ning Yiran cupped his hands together. "Thank you for the advice, clan brother." After passing the mountain Overlook Stone, the group didn't slow down. They soon arrived at the base of the mountain where there were many buildings. After knocking on a courtyard door, the young man who spoke took a step back. "Elder, Ning Feng has come to report." After a moment, the courtyard door opened from within. An old man with a white face and puffy eye bags walked out, his body weak and listless. But everyone was startled, and awe filled their eyes. Nascent Seoul in the Southern Empire and Northern Dynasty. These were peak powerhouses. But here they only lived in simple courtyards, as if they weren't anything at all. This sort of silent impact was even more direct and shocking. Chapter 242. The nascent Seoul old man had a faint look in his eyes. He glanced over. "I understand." Ning Feng cupped his hands together. "Elder, if there is nothing else, we will take our leave first." The nascent Seoul old man nodded, and the two of them bowed again with incomparably respectful expressions. Then they took a few steps back and left. "Outer branch Ning Yiran greets elder." Ning Yiran bowed in greeting. I am Ning Hao, and I am in charge of external affairs. No matter what your status is in the outside world, you should all be careful here. I don't like trouble. Waving his hand, he said, All right, you may leave. He turned around and closed the door. A trace of embarrassment appeared on Ning Yiran's face, but he quickly adjusted his breathing and calmed down. This caused a few expectant gazes in the crowd to feel disappointed. It was unknown where several cultivators came from. Their expressions were cold. Follow us. The group entered a courtyard in the corner. The long table in the courtyard was filled with piles of items. 2 sets of clothes for daily change. 1 identity token. Drip your blood on it, and it will recognize you as its master. Remember to wear it at all times. The rules are written in the jade slip. Finally, there is a small magical ability. Your luck isn't bad. This time, we randomly selected a small divine ability. It's very useful if you cultivate it well. The cultivator who spoke had a square face and a calm aura. But when he mentioned this, there was a strange look in his eyes. The elder just reminded you. I'll say it again. No matter who you are, you can only start from the lowest level here. Of course, as long as you have enough potential and ability, you will soon be valued by the elders of the clan. You have 1 day to prepare. At this time tomorrow, you will be assigned according to your identity information. This courtyard was the residence of a group of nearly 40 people. It was not a problem for them to live in, but they could forget about comfort. What was left for Qin Yu was a small house in a dark corner of the courtyard. As he walked in, there was only a dozen feet of space inside. There was a bed, a table, a chair, and nothing else. It was truly simple and crude. He put down the clothes and token and picked up the jade slip. After probing it and not sensing anything wrong, he probed it with his divine sense. After a while, he opened his eyes, a thoughtful look on his face. This was indeed where the gold noble family was located. It was called the Blue Cloud World, and the Ning bloodline lived here. Along the way, all the villages and towns they passed by were the descendants of this bloodline. Ning City's Ning Mansion was a branch of the Ning clan left in the outside world. This could be considered as a rough explanation. After that, there were many strict rules. However, there were also some exciting things in it, such as examinations and promotions. The gold noble family placed great importance on talents. As long as one was outstanding enough and revealed their strength, they would be able to obtain the status they deserved. The promotion test was set up for this purpose. It was held once every month. The winners would be promoted, while the losers would be eliminated. The gold noble family lived in seclusion here. Even if their bloodline was powerful enough and they were able to maintain their prosperity for a long time, it wasn't unrelated to this system. Qin Yu didn't want to stand out here, so he only glanced over it to ensure that he wouldn't make a mistake and then tossed it to the back of his mind. When he flipped to the end, it was what the Ning clan called minor mystical powers. It was indeed a simple item. Its name was Soul Sword Arrow. That's right, it was labeled as such. Strictly speaking, it was a type of soul ability that was both offensive and defensive. It had to be known that the soul slaughter art was something that could only be touched upon at the divine soul level. Up until now, Qin Yu had only seen the whale sovereign barely use it. Just this point alone made this Soul Sword Arrow magical ability extremely precious. But there was one thing to note. In their group, the one with the highest cultivation, Ning Yiran, was only at the 7th level of Golden Core. He was still 108,000 miles away from touching upon the soul. It could even be said that it was impossible for any of them to touch upon the divine soul realm in their entire lives. So, although the Soul Sword Arrow was good, it was extremely useless to them. It was no wonder that the Ning family cultivator had acted a bit strange before. But Qin Yu was an exception. His eyes brightened. He carefully read through the cultivation method, and after some deliberation, he smiled. It seemed that cultivating this supernatural power wouldn't be too difficult. The soul sword could resist outside attacks, and the soul arrow could explode. killing with a single strike. It was indeed good. He closed his eyes. Within his soul space, Spirity awoke from her cultivation. The starlight that fell from her head also stopped. When Qin Yu's soul was healed, she had smoothly revived. A bright light flashed in Spirity's eyes. Then she closed her eyes to cultivate. Partner souls were famous, and their uses weren't as simple as they seemed. For instance, if Qin Yu cultivated the soul sword arrow, she could also cultivate it. When attacking an enemy, whether it was the soul sword or the soul arrow, both could be used together. 2 hours later, Qin Yu opened his eyes, a look of satisfaction on his face. The soul sword arrow was indeed simple to cultivate. In just 2 hours, he had formed the initial form. All that was left was to spend some time slowly solidifying it. Then, this supernatural power could be considered complete. When the Gold noble family took out the soul sword arrow, they probably never imagined that they would give someone a pleasant surprise. This was a good sign. Perhaps his trip to the blue cloud world would be very smooth. Restraining his thoughts, Qin Yu picked up the status token. Even though his understanding of the path of array formations was still at the beginning, for better or worse, he had gained some insight. This token was very simple. It could only record one's aura as well as some other simple array symbols. Although he didn't know what use they had, it shouldn't be dangerous. With a flick of his finger, a bead of dark red blood fell onto the token and was instantly absorbed. Then, Qin Yu's eyebrows arched up, a bit of surprise on his face. Looking at the status token in his hand, he secretly praised it. This was truly worthy of being the Gold noble family. Their cultivation civilization was so brilliant that it could even compare to the sea races. No, it could even be said that it was even more complete than the sea races. It was true that the status token could identify one's identity, but it also had the functions of communication and listening in. There was also an inquiry interface when one probed it with their divine sense. Within the token, there were several built-in numbers. Of these, 10086 was placed at the very front with the family's customer service. Qin Yu thought for a moment. Then his thoughts stirred and he dialed the number. After several breaths of time, the call connected and a sweet and tender female voice sounded out. Dear first-level disciple, how are you? Everything is busy right now. If there is no need or time is tight, please follow the prompts. For contribution, inquiry, and exchange, please press the number 1 key. For mission inquiry and claim, please press the number 2 key. After hanging up, Qin Yu revealed a look of admiration. Just this customer service number was much better than the sea races. The listening function wasn't too different. One could use the token to automatically search for all radio stations. But there were some popular programs such as The Emotional World, Cultivation Lectures, and so forth that were temporarily sealed off. One needed to pay a fee to unlock them. The Five Flowers Gate was a wonderful place. Thinking about it, the great figures of the Ning family were worried that the juniors would be depressed if they stayed in the blue cloud world for too long, causing their personalities to distort. This small token didn't seem difficult to refine, but who would have thought that there would be so many tricks to it? Compared to the Gold noble family, the cultivation world of the Southern Empire and Northern Dynasty were simply the countryside. The next day, the Ning Mansion cultivators gathered together once more. Their faces were filled with excitement and surprise as they spoke to the people around them in hushed tones. Most of them were talking about the token, but there were also several people who were mumbling about the minor supernatural abilities that the main family had given them. They were so high-end that they could only despair. After all, a good thing was definitely a good thing. If they couldn't cultivate it, even if they gave it to them, then they could only blame themselves for not being strong enough. Silence! The square-faced cultivator said in a low voice, My name is Ning Hai and I am the head of the External Affairs Disciples. Before you are promoted to Internal Affairs Disciples, you will all be under my control. Of course, if anyone is dissatisfied, they can challenge me. This chapter is not finished, Please continue to the next page. I issue a challenge. As long as you can defeat me, the position of first seat will be yours. Then, does anyone want to challenge me? There was silence. What nonsense. Ning Hai's perfect golden core aura was clear to see, and with his muscular body, he didn't look like someone that was easy to provoke. Who would want to look for trouble when they first arrived? Ning Hai nodded. Since no one has any objections, then I will announce your arrangements. The first was Ning Yuan. He entered the scripture hall. Looking at the envious looks of the several Ning family cultivators, it was clear that this job was quite good. Everyone was secretly envious, but helpless. Although they all started from the bottom was different. As the young master of the Ning mansion, Ning Yuan was clearly given preferential treatment. Afterwards, the names were read out one by one. Looking at the complexions of the Ning mansion people, the order of their names seemed to represent how highly the main family regarded them. So, when Qin Yu's name was read out in the order of the top, many people's complexions changed. In particular, several Ning mansion juniors that hadn't been named yet had ugly complexions. Qin Ning, you will enter the alchemy chamber as a first-rank advisor. Qin Yu cupped his hands together and accepted the order. After the announcement, someone would immediately lead them away. In front of Qin Yu was a somewhat beautiful young woman. She faintly smiled. It's been a long time since someone has come to our alchemy chamber. Junior apprentice, Brother Qin Ning. Please follow me. Qin Yu cupped his hands together and bowed. The two of them left. As for the icy cold and indignant gazes behind them, they were completely ignored. The Gold noble family's alchemy chamber was built halfway up the mountain and occupied a large valley. Occasionally, one could look up and see clouds flying past. The scenery here was even better, and the buildings were spacious and bright. Most importantly, the spiritual strength here was nearly twice as rich as it was at the base of the mountain. It was no wonder that the higher a Ning family cultivator's rank was, the higher they lived. Not only did it represent their status, but it also represented personal benefits. Of course, although Qin Yu could enter here, he couldn't stay here outside of work hours. He still had to return to his residence at the base of the mountain. Seeing Qin Yu's surprised expression, the young woman gathered up her hair and smiled. Qin Ning, I've already looked over your information. With your level, it shouldn't be difficult for you to rise to a third-grade alchemist. At that time, you will naturally be able to move nearby. Moreover, with your status as a second-grade alchemist, as long as you can pass the first month and pass the examination, you will immediately receive the treatment of a third-grade disciple. Your residence will rise, and you will also have your own courtyard. Qin Yu cupped his hands together in thanks. The young woman covered her mouth and smiled. Her limpid eyes swept over his face. Even though she didn't say anything, it was still enough to make one's thoughts wander. All right, let's go in. I'll bring you in first. After busying himself for a while and meeting with several stewards, Qin Yu's status was confirmed. He would be a first-grade assistant of the alchemy chamber, responsible for arranging all sorts of alchemy materials. In simpler terms, he would start from selecting materials. As for alchemy, he temporarily didn't have anything to do with it. Cultivators from the Gold noble family had always been proud and arrogant. They didn't think much of the outside world, not even those from the outer branches. Thus, even though Alchemist Zhang had given Qin Yu an extremely high evaluation, in their opinion, without personally verifying it, they couldn't believe it at all. For a second-grade alchemist to be assigned this job was a bit disrespectful. The young woman smiled a bit more helplessly. She turned and said a few comforting words. Qin Yu was calm. He smiled and shook his head, indicating that there was no problem. The young woman's name was Ning Yuan. She gave him a thumbs up. Qin Ning, not bad. This big sister thinks highly of you. Work hard. Then she floated away. Qin Yu smiled. He lowered his head, his complexion returning to normal. He really didn't care. As long as he entered the gold noble family and waited for the opportunity that Heaven's Seek pavilion spoke of, everything would be fine. Chapter 243. Everything went smoothly in Qin Yu's alchemy chamber. After his solid second-grade alchemy cultivation was confirmed, everyone's attitudes became much more relaxed and friendly. Such a young level 2 alchemist. Even if his future was not limitless, he was at least extremely talented. If he worked hard, it would be extremely easy for him to achieve some achievements in the future. In the green cloud world, it was considered not bad. Qin Ning, today's work is over. Hurry back and rest. The young woman, Ning Yuan, warmly said. There was a faint smile on her face, like a warm spring breeze caressing her heart. Qin Yu stood up and cupped his hands together. Thank you, senior apprentice sister. This senior apprentice sister Ning Yuan's husband died early, and she was a widowed young woman. Normally, there would be some gossip, but her temperament was indifferent, and she was very calm about it. Perhaps it was because she was particularly good to Qin Yu, but in the past few days there had been several women gossiping about her and Qin Yu. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After tidying up his work, Qin Yu bid farewell to the others and left the alchemy room, walking towards the foot of the mountain. It had already been more than half a month since he entered the green cloud world. Every day, he would go between work and residence, silent like a stone. Even in the courtyard, Qin Yu still wasn't welcomed. Normally, they would just roll their eyes and ignore him. But today, things were a bit different. There was joy and happiness in their eyes. Qin Yu frowned and returned to his room. On the second day, he knew what those gazes represented. When Ning Yuan saw Qin Ning, her eyebrows furrowed together. There was a bit of hesitation in her eyes. Qin Ning, I want to ask you, are the rumors true? The rumors hadn't changed at all. They were still the same as they had been in the Ning mansion. Qin Yu had sold out a woman that loved him in order to obtain the qualifications to enter the gold noble family. Of course, in the eyes of the people in the alchemy chamber, this wasn't something that could withstand scrutiny. With the talent that Qin Yu had revealed, there was no need for him to do this. But if this was the truth, then it represented a person's character. Ning Yuan had the best relationship with Qin Yu. As she asked this question, everyone pricked up their ears and looked over. Qin Yu thought for a moment. He cupped his hands together and said, reporting to senior apprentice sister, that's about it. Ning Yuan's eyes dimmed. She glanced at him, wanting to say something, but hesitating. She nodded and turned to leave. Then the news spread at an astonishing speed. Qin Yu had admitted it in front of everyone. This caused the people who spread the rumors to be surprised, but also incomparably happy. This brat Qin Ning had smashed his own foot with a rock. This was too amazing. Originally, if Qin Yu had stubbornly refused to admit it, then no matter how many rumors spread out, they still wouldn't have been able to do anything to him. It was obvious that the main family didn't value the outside world. But now, Qin Yu had admitted it. That was perfect. Humph. Let's see how he can still be arrogant in front of us this time. He has a bright future after entering the alchemy room. I want to see who still dares to use him. After this incident, not only will his future be ruined, but he can forget about getting an important position for at least a few years. I'm afraid that's not all. I heard that among the alchemy room masters, there's someone who loves flowers. He doesn't like such fickle and heartless people the most. Perhaps it'll be even more fun. Sure enough, not long after, Qin Yu was called away and ruthlessly reprimanded. The manager looked at him with a gaze filled with loathing and loathing. Then, Qin Yu was found an excuse to be removed from his current job and become a member of the waste pill disposal department. That's right, a useless pill again. No matter where this thing was placed, it would always be a harmful substance. Even if the gold noble family was amazing, there was nothing they could do about it. The alchemy room was a good place. The treatment was high, the welfare was good, and there was plenty of money to be had. The waste pill disposal department was clearly an exception. There were only a few people there, and it was located in the most remote corner. There was a tight array formation blocking it, and normally no one would be willing to go there. After being exiled here, it could be said that their actions were dark and heavy. After leaving the manager's office, Qin Yu revealed a helpless smile, but in the blink of an eye he calmed down. 2 days ago, when he publicly admitted it, he had already prepared himself to face the current situation. After entering the gold, noble family, the less attention he drew the better. If he didn't admit it, who knew how long it would take for him to make a fuss? He didn't know. He might as well choose the simplest and most direct method to resolve the matter. Before Qin Yu returned to his work desk, the results of his actions had already spread like wildfire. With a communication identity token, the efficiency of spreading news would increase by a great deal. Qin Yu didn't care too much about the gazes around him. He tidied up a bit and left. He ran into Ning Yuan. Her steps were hurried and her face was flushed red, as if she had hurried over. "Qin Ning," she called out in a low voice. Qin Yu cupped his hands together. "Greetings, senior apprentice sister." He stepped forward and passed by her. Ning Yuan stood where she was, watching his fading back. A complex expression crossed her face. She opened her mouth, but couldn't say anything in the end. A bit of guilt swelled in her eyes. Today's situation wasn't what she wanted. But, strictly speaking, Qin Yu's fate was directly caused by her questioning him in front of everyone. Although she didn't want to have any more interactions with Qin Yu, entering the waste pill disposal department was still a bit too much of a punishment. She feared that Qin Ning had already developed a grudge against her. A bitter smile appeared on Ning Yuan's face. Qin Yu calmly entered the waste pill disposal department. He was like a pebble falling into thick and turbid water, not causing a single ripple. "Qin Ning, from now on every 1st and 15th day, you will be responsible for disposing of waste pills. Do a good job." The so-called supervisor of the waste pill disposal department had hazy eyes and reeked of alcohol. His clothes were in disarray. Before he finished speaking, a woman's cheerful voice echoed out from the room. She waved her hand, indicating for Qin Yu to hurry up and leave. Then, with a strange chuckle, she ducked into the room. Soon, before Qin Yu reached the courtyard door, he heard a slightly inappropriate sound emitting from the room. There was a crackling sound, and then it was omitted. He shook his head. His 5 senses were too good, and sometimes it was truly vexing. He had unknowingly eavesdropped on the wall. If there was a benefit to entering the waste pill disposal department, it would be that he could enjoy the treatment of a 3rd-grade alchemist in advance. Here, he would have his own courtyard. Of course, the unspoken words were, "Pill toxins, who knows if you've been infected or not? It's best if you obediently stay here and don't run around." He pushed open the door and entered. The courtyard was covered in dust. It was unknown how long it had been since it had been cleaned. Luckily, when the Gold noble family was constructing the buildings, they had built a good foundation and the dust-clearing array formation was still intact. The only thing they lacked was spirit stones. After filling it, there were several humming sounds, and the dust was quickly swept away. The small courtyard was soon restored to its clean state. Qin Yu decided to stay here. As for the waste pills that everyone worried about, was that even a problem to consider? As Qin Yu was exiled, the rumors gradually subsided. Besides Ning Yuan occasionally mentioning that young man who had suddenly appeared and then vanished not long after, most people had already forgotten about him. At most, they would occasionally mention him and talk about him as a joke. Time passed quietly. 3 months had passed. Ning Yuan was truly worthy of being the most outstanding outer branch disciple. He had passed the promotion test with excellent results and was now a 5th-grade disciple. He had obtained the status of an internal affairs disciple. Among the Ning family juniors, there were several people who performed well. One of them was a woman who shined with brilliance. She was fancied by an elder of the Ning family and was directly received as a disciple. It could be said that she soared into the heavens in a single bound. The others were also working hard, constantly climbing upwards. In the blue cloud world, the more they knew, the more their horizons would be broadened. In the depths of everyone's heart, there was something called ambition that was growing. As for Chinyu, he had already been thoroughly forgotten. Waste pill disposal area. Chinyu lived in the courtyard. He was originally worried that he wouldn't be able to easily take the waste pills for himself, but who knew that from start to finish, no one would ask about it. After trying it out once or twice, he finally relaxed. He licked his lips, revealing a satisfied expression. The Gold noble family had countless powerhouses. He knew that there were over a dozen nascent souls. However, they seemed to be under some sort of restriction and couldn't casually step out of the blue cloud world. The more powerhouses there were, the greater the demand for high-level pills. And in refining high-level pills, the failure rate was extremely high. Thus, the approximate ratio was that the Gold noble family's powerhouses would obtain 10 finished pills and Chinyu would obtain 50 portions of waste pill materials. After the little blue lamp separated and purified them, and disregarding the losses from failure, he would obtain around 20 finished pills. But there was one point that had to be clear. The Gold noble family's 10 finished pills were distributed among the powerhouses according to their strength and status. As for these 20 pills, they belonged to Chinyu alone. Moreover, the quality of the pills couldn't be compared to before. These 3 months had been inconceivably wonderful for Chinyu. A massive number of precious pills fell into his hands, causing the might of his poisoned finger to become even more terrifying. Now, even a late nascent soul cultivator would suffer a miserable fate if they were struck. He lived a comfortable and undisturbed life with harvests every day. Sometimes, Chinyu would even subconsciously forget his own goal, only wishing that this sort of life could continue for a bit longer. The alchemy chamber was located halfway up a mountain. It was surrounded by beautiful mountain valleys. Although the work was tense and busy because of their status, unless they were obsessed with it, they would always have time to rest, under the warm afternoon sun, drinking a cup of carefully brewed milk tea, listening to the programs on the radio, or even reading a book for a while. All of these things were extremely comfortable. But recently, this sort of leisurely atmosphere had clearly decreased by a great deal. In the last 2 days, it had basically disappeared. Ning Yuan had a dignified expression. She had a specially refined storage ring and was collecting the waste pills from the alchemists in the last half-month. Because no one was willing to do this work, and it was difficult for them to accept the assignment, it had always been a rotation. This month, it was Ning Yuan's turn. Moreover, there was one point that someone should have noticed. The waste pill disposal manager had arranged for Chinyu to collect waste pills on the 1st and 15th of the month. This was their entire job. After collecting the last waste pill, Ning Yuan took out the list of names from her storage ring. After making sure that she didn't miss anything, she turned and walked towards the northeast corner of the alchemy chamber. The mountain here was lower, and facing the sun was a mountain peak. Thus, the environment was darker and gloomier. Although the scenery was good, it was overgrown with weeds, and there wasn't much beauty to it. Ning Yuan hurried her steps. She arrived in front of an iron door and knocked on it. She took several steps back and lowered her head, frowning. It was unknown what she was thinking. After waiting for a moment, no one opened the iron door. Ning Yuan looked up, a helpless expression on her face. She was well aware of just how lazy the waste pill disposal department was. If it weren't for the rules that she had to personally hand over the waste pills and take back her storage ring, she would have already left. She had no idea how Qin was doing right now. Chapter 244. Thinking about the first time she saw him, she subconsciously had a favorable impression of him. After understanding him a little more, she felt that he was calm, quiet, and had great potential. Ning Yuan faintly sighed. Originally, she wanted to understand him more deeply, but reality didn't give her the chance. Thinking about how he was behind this iron door, in some small courtyard. Ning Yuan's mood couldn't help but fall. In such an environment, perhaps he had already fallen. After all, the waste pill disposal department was a place where one couldn't see any hope. Just as Zhang Xian was deep in thought, the metal door suddenly opened. Then the face in his mind appeared in front of him. Neat and tidy disciple robes, pitch-black eyes bright and spirited. After a moment of surprise, a smile appeared on his face. "Senior apprentice, Sister Ning Yuan, it's been a while." The contrast between what she was thinking and what she saw caused Ning Yuan's heart to skip a beat. Then, she looked up at the man with a warm smile on his face. Her heart began to race. "Oh, it's you." Her poor performance caused the beautiful young woman to blush red and beads of sweat to appear on the tip of her nose. Luckily, Qin Yu didn't seem to care about her embarrassment. I was the one who collected the waste pills on the 1st and 15th days of the month." Ning Yuan composed herself. As she heard these words, she immediately frowned. "You did all of this? How could that be?" She looked up. "Qin Ning, did the people inside force you? Waste pills. Everyone wanted to stay as far away from them as possible. Who would be willing to approach them? If someone said there wasn't something fishy going on, Ning Yuan would be the first to not believe it." Qin Yu smiled and waved his hand. "No, I know." Ning Yuan frowned. "Qin Ning Yu, Senior Apprentice Sister, there is no need to worry. Although pill toxins are terrifying, I can still learn many alchemy skills through analyzing waste pills." This wasn't nonsense. Every waste pill was a case study placed in front of them. They would more or less record the reasons for failure and shortcomings. Admiration rose in Ning Yuan's heart. At the same time, she felt ashamed of her previous judgment. Qin Ning hadn't given up on himself or fallen into depravity. Instead, he still worked hard in the face of suffering. This caused the look in her eyes to change. She always felt that the tenacious and hard-working Qin Ning shouldn't be the fickle and heartless person that the rumors said he was. Perhaps he had his own difficulties, but now that things had reached this step, there was no way to reverse the situation. Ning Yuan's lips moved. As she was hesitating, Qin Yu changed the topic. "Senior sister seems to have something on her mind?" Ning Yuan sighed inwardly. She decided not to say anything more. She nodded, a bit tired. "That's right. Recently, there have been some matters occurring in the clan." Originally, she wasn't prepared to continue speaking, but the guilt in her heart was too thick. She was worried that Qin Yu would overthink things, so she continued. "It seems that there has been some bad news coming out from the outside world. Recently, the lords have been angry, and the atmosphere is a bit tense." Qin Yu's eyes lit up. If the Gold noble family was able to cause such chaos, then it definitely wasn't a minor matter. The first thing he thought of was the opportunity that the mysterious youth had mentioned in Heavenseek Pavilion. Could it be right now? But with Ning Yuan's status, it was impossible for her to know more. Thus, Qin Yu didn't ask any further. He nodded and said, "Then Senior Apprentice Sister should be a bit more cautious in her actions, lest she be affected." As he spoke, he stretched out his hand. "Give me the useless pill. Senior Apprentice Sister can go back earlier. I've already been delayed for a long time because of some trivial matters. Unfinished chapter. Please turn the page." Ning Yuan nodded and handed over her storage ring. Qin Yu was already familiar with this process. He cleanly transferred the waste pills from his storage ring to a special storage ring in the waste pill disposal department. After making sure that there weren't any mistakes, he entered the status token to indicate that he had completed today's mission. "All right, Senior Apprentice Sister, please take the storage ring. Goodbye." Ning Yuan still wanted to say something, but she smiled and turned to leave. Behind her, there was the sound of an iron door closing. She paused for a moment and then smiled. It seemed that Junior Apprentice, Brother Qin Ning, didn't hate her at all. Moreover, even though he was in the waste pill disposal department, he was still working so hard. There might be a chance for him to make a comeback in the future. Qin Yu hurried back to his dwelling. First, he transferred all the useless pills into his storage ring. A thoughtful look crossed his face. Perhaps the time had come. Staying in the waste pill disposal department wasn't bad, but it was inevitable that he wouldn't be able to receive news from the outside. Qin Yu had to admit that this was something he hadn't considered when he first considered it. It seemed that he had to find a way to leave from here. He flipped his hand, and a jade box appeared in his palm. Inside was a material called the nascent forming pill that Qin Yu had carefully prepared. Originally, only half of this material had been destroyed. After Qin Yu carefully processed it with a little blue lamp. He had preserved it in order to deal with an unexpected situation. But once he left, he feared he wouldn't have another chance to return. This was a rich harvest of high-level pills. Qin Yu was a bit reluctant to part with it. However, compared to the great Tao of nascent soul, it wasn't anything at all. The next day, Qin Yu left the waste pill disposal department. He presented the jade box and requested to see the alchemy chamber steward. He said that he had found over half of the nascent forming pill materials in the waste pills. The nascent forming pill was incomparably precious, and its materials were equally valuable. This was absolutely a great merit. The steward hesitated for a long time. Then he ordered someone to call in Qin Yu. After a moment of questioning, he determined that Qin Yu wasn't speaking nonsense and had truly been diligently studying in the waste pill disposal department to discover the materials for the nascent forming pill. After a moment of silence, he ordered someone to retrieve Qin Yu's file. Rest for several days first and carefully observe your condition. If there are no abnormalities in half a month, you can come back to work. Qin Yu respectfully excused himself. As the news spread out, everyone in the alchemy chamber fell to the ground. Who would have thought that someone who entered the waste pill disposal department would actually find a chance to turn things around? They all cited Qin Yu's dog's hit luck. And after news of this spread out, those people who didn't like Qin Yu sneered and didn't do anything to him. In their opinion, even if Qin Yu came back after spending several months with waste pills, he would likely have been corroded by the poison and most of his foundation would have been destroyed. How could he possibly compare to them? There was no threat and they couldn't divert their energy. In addition, the situation had been tense recently, so they might as well let him go and let him fend for himself. Ning Yuan might be the only one who was happy about this. She never thought that just because she thought about it, Qi Ning would really find a chance to turn things around and smoothly return to the alchemy chamber. This even made her think that this was fate. A faint blush appeared on her cheeks. Junior apprentice brother Qi Ning, congratulations! Feeling the joy in her voice, Qin Yu secretly apologized. He cupped his hands together and said, Senior apprentice sister, I just returned and there are still some matters I need to attend to. Excuse me. Ning Yuan was startled. Her face blushed red. She swept her eyes around and saw many eyes looking at her. She scolded herself for losing her sense of propriety. Qi Ning had just come out and was trying to keep a low profile, so how could she approach him? He really was a good person. He was a meticulous and intelligent man. As cautious and intelligent as he was, how could he possibly admit to the rumors in front of everyone? Taking a step back, even if the rumors were true, there must be a deeper story hidden in the story. Ning Yuan increasingly felt that the Qi Ning in front of her wasn't that sort of person. His entire body seemed to be shrouded in a layer of fog that one couldn't help but want to unravel. In truth, things weren't like this at all. Qin, you really just didn't want to approach her, that was all. Of course, he didn't deny that there was a reason for this. It was because he didn't want Ning Yuan to be implicated in his actions. There wasn't anything embarrassing about this. Such a beautiful and gentle young woman who lived alone had warm feelings for you. Even if you didn't have the heart to accept her, it was normal for him to consider her a little. Because Qin Yu had worked at the waste pill disposal department for 3 months, his residence at the base of the mountain had long since been cancelled. Perhaps it was to compensate him, or perhaps it was to reward him. but Qin Yu was allowed to live halfway up the mountain. Of course, there was no need to think about a good courtyard. It was located at the corner of the valley. Although it was a bit small, it could still be considered quiet. The layout inside couldn't be compared to the waste pill disposal department. The decorations were exquisite and the furniture was exquisite. Qin Yu sat down, a sharp light flashing in his eyes. Perhaps it was time for him to find a way to probe for information. After several attempts to no avail, he finally decided to use Ning Yuan's favorable impression of him. Qin Yu's information channels were far inferior to those of a member of the Ning family. As if inadvertently mentioning it, Ning Yuan was clearly much more relaxed. She spoke with much less scruples. Slowly, Qin Yu began to understand the general situation. It was rumored that the Gold noble family held the key to a special space. It seemed that there was more than one key and it was held by different influences. The reason for this rumor was that the Gold noble family had tried to use some sort of secret technique to forcefully open a special space with a key. As a result, they were questioned by the influences that held the other keys. Ning Yuan had a dignified expression. She repeatedly told Qin Yu not to reveal this information. The reason she knew of this was because she had inadvertently heard her elders mention it at home. Qin Yu nodded in agreement. Originally, he didn't have absolute assurance in his heart. But now he was sure that the opportunity that Heaven's Seek Pavilion spoke of was the current situation. With the Gold noble family strength, there were only a handful of influences in the world that could control such a precious key without fear of provoking disaster. Moreover, they had the qualifications to question them: the demonic path and immortal eclipse valley. These two were the most likely suspects. Qin Yu's eyebrows arched up. He thought that he might be able to see some acquaintances this time. If so, then he would have to be more careful in his actions, lest something unexpected happen. As he was thinking, at the peak of the mountain city, within a grand hall shrouded in fog, the atmosphere was heavy and gloomy. Everyone, the letters of accountability from the three parties have already been placed on the table. The old ancestors' original intention was to shirk responsibility, but it is clear that they are suspicious and unwilling to give up. The reason I have gathered everyone here is to discuss how to deal with this. In the main seat, a white-bearded, white-browed old man slowly spoke up. He wore light purple robes, and his aura was dignified and noble. The matter of space is my clan's greatest secret, so why would it be leaked out? I think it is best to investigate this matter first. Otherwise we will continue to be schemed against by others in the future. On the left, a black-haired old woman coldly spoke up. Her face was as hard as stone. The voice of the old man in the main seat was a bit colder. I have already passed down orders. The same thing will not happen a second time. Now, let us discuss the matter of accountability from the three parties. Chapter 245. In the hall, the leaders of the Gold noble family all had ugly complexions. With their Ning family's noble status, they were actually being forced by the forces of this wild land. They had truly lost all face. However, they had no choice but to lower their heads. The three parties had joined forces to make things difficult for them. Although they were angry, they could only think of ways to resolve the situation. This old man has read the letters. The three parties have clearly obtained concrete evidence through certain channels. It won't be easy to satisfy them. Since they already know, they should understand that our attempt has failed. Why are they still forcing us? It's very simple. The three powers do not wish for us to continue grasping the method of experimentation. After all, even if we fail this time, it does not mean that we won't fail again. The sinful girl's strength isn't enough. We've already done our best. How could we try again? The point is, we know this, but they don't. The figures with dignified expressions and terrifying auras spoke one after another, gradually pushing the matter to a point that everyone hoped to see. The key to solving the problem of the three parties was the sinful girl. At this point, It was already very clear that they were all smart people. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to cooperate with each other so well. But no one was willing to point it out. The old man in the main seat cursed inwardly. He frowned and thought for a moment. Does everyone mean to hand over that evil girl? Only someone of his status could say these words. It was tantamount to declaring their respective attitudes. The atmosphere in the hall eased up. It's not a good idea to hand over the evil girl. She's still a member of the upper family. If someone investigates this matter in the future, we'll be in trouble. The upper family had previously said that we should make arrangements for the evil girl. We can't hand her over, but we can marry her off. Men should get married when they're of age, and women should get married when they're of age. This is the law of the world. Even if people notice us in the future, they can't blame us. Patriarch, please make a decision. The old man in the main seat thought for a long time. Good. Then, as everyone has said, we will send a message to the 3 sides that my Ning family wishes to marry off a daughter. Send out a virtuous and outstanding person to ask for her hand in marriage. The final verdict. The dignified atmosphere of the gold, noble family dissipated by half. Instead, it became busy, as if they were about to welcome some important guests. This was confirmed by Madame Ning's words. The clan had already found a way to solve this problem. Marry off his daughter. As she mentioned this young girl that was about to be married off to someone else, Madame Ning's complexion was a bit complex. She sighed. Little Seven's life is bitter. Qin, you didn't care about these words. He thought about it. With the gold, noble family marrying off their daughter and the gathering of guests, this should be the best chance for him to obtain the great Tao method to reach nascent soul. In that case, he needed to participate in it so that he could grasp the opportunity when it came. Thinking for a moment, Qin Yu said, when it comes to marrying off a daughter in the clan, it will surely be done without restraint. Is there anything I can help you with? Ning Yuan was surprised, but she immediately felt gratified. If Qin Ning said this, it was clear he wanted to improve himself. But this wasn't going to be easy. Although they didn't know who the guests would be, from the reaction of the clan, it was clear that they weren't ordinary people. Since the clan was going all out, they would definitely choose the most outstanding juniors to participate. Only then would they not lose face in front of outsiders. Although Qin Ning was good, with his current status, he feared he didn't have the qualifications to participate. However, it was rare for him to have such thoughts, so Ning Yuan didn't want to dampen his enthusiasm. After a moment of hesitation, she said, I can give it a try. Qin, you could clearly feel the awkwardness in her words. He hesitated for a moment and said, I was too rash. Senior apprentice, Sister Ning Yuan, if I were a 3rd-grade alchemist, would I have the qualifications? Ning Yuan's eyes brightened. Of course. The status of a 3rd-grade alchemist is even higher than that of a Golden Core realm martial artist. With your age, it is enough for others to pay attention to you. Junior apprentice, Brother Qin Ning, could it be that you? Qin Yu smiled. I ask Senior Apprentice Sister to speak up for me in a few days. He cupped his hands together and bid his farewells. Looking at his back, Ning Yuan's eyes sparkled. 5 days later, the month's promotion examination would begin. Qin Yu used his status token to register for the 3rd-grade alchemist examination. After he was approved, he received 10,086 service information. It was marked with the preparations for the examination, as well as the examination location and time, rules, penalties for cheating, and other details. After confirming his choice, most of the registration process was completed. Of course, before the examination, he still needed to pay an examination fee, which included 3 sets of 3rd-grade pill materials. The alchemy examination was naturally related to the alchemy chamber. Qin Yu needed to go to the alchemy chamber to pay the fee and complete his registration. Without surprise, there were already many alchemists waiting at the payment counter. Many of them were people that Qin Yu knew. As they saw him arrive, many of them revealed surprised expressions. Although they didn't say anything, their meaning was clear. Why did you come here?" It had to be known that the foundation examination didn't require any additional fees. Qin Yu had a calm expression. He lined up and waited to pay the fee. "Cough, fellow Taoist Qin, what are you doing today?" Finally, an alchemist that he had met several times couldn't help but ask. The people around him perked up their ears. Qin Yu lightly said, "I have applied for this month's third-grade alchemist examination." The alchemist froze in place. The others around him also had strange expressions. They didn't even bother to pretend and turned to look. Did they hear wrong? This boy actually wanted to apply for the third-grade alchemist examination. That was a third-grade alchemist who could refine golden core realm pills. Moreover, the standard for passing was a 30% success rate. How many alchemists had struggled for countless years, trapped in a bottleneck and unable to advance? This included many people here. This was because, although there was only a single grade difference between a second-grade alchemist and a third-grade alchemist, their status was as different as clouds and mud. For instance, foundation establishment and golden core. In the gold noble family, alchemists were even more valued. A third-grade alchemist could obtain a certain degree of respect from the clan. Moreover, this Qin Ning was so young. If he could really pass the examination and become a third-grade alchemist, then that would be far too low of an evaluation of him. Such a young third-grade alchemist would inevitably be raised by the clan. It wasn't impossible for him to become a fourth-grade alchemist in the future. As for a fourth-grade alchemist, that was considered a high-level one. In the clan, their status was even higher than that of an ordinary nascent soul. After paying the fee and receiving the receipt, the registration was finally completed. All that was left was to wait for the examination to begin. Qin Yu nodded to the alchemist who had just spoken and turned to leave. The room was quiet for some time. Everyone regained their composure, their complexions a bit complex. Then someone said, "Perhaps he just wants to experience the difficulty of the third-grade alchemist examination. You and I also did this sort of thing in our early years." That's right, I think so too. For Qin Yu to be able to stabilize his second-grade alchemy realm at such a young age is already commendable. Moreover, he was punished to enter the waste pill disposal department for the past 3 months. So how could he have made any progress? Perhaps he wants to use this method to display his age and potential so that the stewards of the alchemy chamber will notice him and eliminate the negative effects of what happened before. That's reasonable. The next day, the promotion examination officially began. Within the alchemy hall, there were a total of 49 people that applied for the examination. Your identity tokens have already received information about your random assignment. You can just refer to your room. Everyone has 3 sets of materials and 3 chances. Once you succeed, you will pass. The alchemist in charge of the examination had a solemn expression. "Although you already know, I must remind you that the chances of cheating are 0. Once it is discovered, you will be banned from taking the examination for 3 years, and you will also have to pay a heavy fine. I hope that you can think this through. All right, let's begin." Qin Yu walked along the corridor. He looked at the room number in front of him and compared it with the information. After determining that it was correct, he walked in and closed the door behind him. However, there was a transparent crystal above the door. From the outside, one could clearly see what was going on inside. There were patrolling examiners constantly walking around. The room was simple and crude. There was only a pill furnace and a table. There were 3 sets of materials on the table. Qin Yu looked over them and determined that there were no problems. He also checked the pill furnace and found that there were no problems. He flicked his fingers and flames appeared out of thin air. He used the method of igniting fire to ignite the pill furnace. With a flick of his sleeves, a set of materials was swept up. A moment later, with a pung sound, black smoke began to emit from within the pill furnace. It was clear that the refinement had failed. Qin Yu had a calm expression. He extinguished the furnace fire and flicked his sleeves. The waste pill materials were placed to the side. When the temperature of the pill furnace dropped a little, He ignited it once more and began the second refinement. Bang! Failure! In the corridor, the patrolling examiner looked away, a trace of contempt on his face. He really was here to build up his reputation. With this level of strength, he wanted to pass the third-grade alchemy examination? What a joke! The patrolling examiner shook his head and left. News of Chinyu participating in the examination had rapidly spread from the moment he paid the fee, attracting the attention of many people. This patrolling examiner was one of them. As a third-grade alchemist, he was well aware of how difficult it was to reach this step. With Chinyu's age, if he could reach this step in one fell swoop, wouldn't that mean that he had lived all these years like a dog? Luckily, he didn't have any hope. But what this patrolling examiner didn't know was that not long after he left, Chinyu began the third refinement. He ignited the pill furnace, placed in the materials, formed the law formula, and opened the furnace to take out the pills. There wasn't anything special about the entire process. It was calm and steady, as if all of this was natural. Chinyu flicked his sleeves and placed the 3 purple dawn pills into a jade bottle. Then he walked to the door and opened it. The patrolling examiner quickly walked over. Beneath his calm face there was a faint smile. "You've all failed. You may leave," Chinyu lightly said. "I have formed the pills. I would like to request an examination." The patrolling examiner's voice came to an abrupt halt. His eyes widened and his face turned sluggish. He looked down. Indeed, Chinyu was holding a jade bottle in his hand. Inside the bottle were 3 light purple pills. The patrolling examiner took a deep breath and dryly said, "Let me take a look." The patrolling examiner received the jade bottle and uncorked it. The fire energy was still there. This was indeed a newly refined pill. He sniffed the medicinal fragrance and then looked at its appearance. The patrolling examiner sighed inwardly. Third grade, purple dawn pill. That's right. He looked up at the young face in front of him. The patrolling examiner was in a daze. He had actually passed? As he thought of his own performance, just now his face heated up. "I will hand the pills to the chief examiner to review. Only if there are no problems will you truly pass the examination." The patrolling examiner took the pills and brought Chinyu to the area where the examination was held. The chief examiner had a dignified expression. After asking a few questions, he took the jade bottle with both hands. After a long silence, he slowly said, "Qinning, congratulations on passing the examination."